Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is banished from Konoha after nearly killing Sasuke in an attempt to bring him home. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Sand. Nothing but sand in every direction, as far as the eye could see. Well, it was called the village hidden in the sand. Logically it had to be surrounded by the stuff. The blonde trudged through the dunes, sometimes sinking up to his knees in them. He cast a longing gaze around him, looking for shade, water, anything. But saw nothing apart from sun-baked sand. He lost his footing and rolled down the dune, coming to rest in a depression at the foot of the sand. He lay there unable to move, his strength drained by the heat. He dug his hand in his pocket, clutching the leaf headband. "I really wish I'd thought this through more," the blonde muttered as he closed his eyes. Naruto's mind found its way back in what used to be his home after he'd promised Sakura he'd bring back Sasuke. After his training with Jiraiya, Naruto had returned to Konoha and met Sasuke in the Valley of the End, just as he had 3 years ago. The fight between him and Sasuke had ended up with Sasuke's Chidori punching a hole through his chest, then he blacked out. The next thing Naruto knew, he was standing over an unconscious, barely alive, Sasuke. Kyuubi told Naruto he'd taken control and flattened him. "It was either you or him and I made the choice for you," Kyuubi had growled as Naruto picked up Sasuke. Anbu had grabbed him the second he'd come through Konoha's main gates. They'd taken Sasuke to the hospital and dragged him in front of the council. Tsunade, Iruka and Jiraiya had tried to defend him, but every ninja in the village had felt the blast of chakra released when Kyuubi took control. He still found his stomach sinking when he remembered the words of the head council member, Danzo. "Naruto Uzumaki, vessel of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, you are hereby banished from the village hidden in the leaves. Should you ever return to this village, you will be put to death. Is that in any way unclear?" Naruto shook his head, clenching his fists. He looked down at the floor, murmuring, "It wasn't my fault. It wasn't. He started to yell it wasn't my fault. "Uzumaki, control yourself. You will be allowed 4 hours to collect your belongings and leave." But those words, Danzo and the council members stood and left the room. Naruto also left the room wordlessly, ignoring everyone he passed. As he walked through the streets, the usual jeers and insults met his ears, but he had learned to filter them out long ago. Naruto looked around his apartment as he opened the door, from the bed to the kitchen. He picked up the photo of him, Sakura, Kakashi and Sasuke from the table next to his bed. Pulling a bag from under his bed, he stuffed the photo into it. Naruto had spent almost an hour packing, sealing the larger objects into scrolls and throwing the other items straight into his bag when there was a knock on the door. He crossed the room and opened the door to see Lee, Tenten, Hinata and Neji standing there. "Naruto, they can't do this to you," Lee said, eyes blazing. "I agree," Neji added. "They already have." Naruto's voice had none of his normal energy as he went back to packing. "How can you stand there and accept their decision?" Tenten demanded. "Easily," Naruto said flatly. "My father has a lot of influence on the council, maybe he can change the decision," Hinata said. "There's nothing to do, the council's choice is final. At least come and have a goodbye bowl of ramen with us," Hinata pleaded. "How can I say no to that?" Naruto laughed, uncomfortably. Team 9 and Hinata led a still gloomy Naruto to Ichiraku. Naruto's expression brightened slightly as he saw Kakashi, Iruka, Guy, Asuma, Kurenai, Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Kiba with Akamaru at his feet, and Shino waiting for them. The 5 bowls of ramen passed in almost complete silence. Naruto didn't bolt the ramen in his normal way, as if he was savoring every bite. He eventually finished and made his way back to his apartment, accompanied by the crowd, and collected his bag. Kakashi noticed the Anbu squad on the roof above Naruto's apartment. The Anbu squad, Naruto's send-off party casting dirty looks at them, escorted the blonde fox boy to the main gate. Once they reached the gate, the Anbu parted, letting the crowd say their final goodbyes. Kiba slapped him on the back, as did Lee and Guy. "This is troublesome," Shikamaru said in his usual drawl. Choji didn't say anything but handed Naruto an unopened packet of chips. Naruto turned to Hinata, who seemed to be about to cry. She suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck and hugged him tightly. "Take care Naruto," she whispered in his ear. "I'll be fine," he said as Hinata let him go. "Naruto, where will you go?" Iruka asked. "I don't know," Naruto lied, giving the Chunin a weak smile. "See you around, Iruka-sensei." With that, Naruto turned his back on the village hidden in the leaves and walked off into the forest. Truth be told, Naruto knew of a safe haven, or at least a place he could call home. Sunagakur. Naruto was brought back to baking reality by the cry of a vulture. His grip tightened around the leaf headband in his left hand. "Well, at least the council will be happy I'm dead," Naruto thought to himself. Then a shadow fell over him. He looked up at the person standing over him. All Naruto could see through his blurred vision was short red hair and the gourd. "Ara?" he asked the shadow and passed out. 4 years later have passed since Gaara rescued Naruto from the desert. Naruto reluctantly opened his eyes, he groaned as he realized it was still dark outside. His mind turned, as it often did if he woke before dawn, to the weeks after Gaara had rescued him from the desert. He'd spent the first few days in a darkened room recovering from heatstroke. Naruto looked from the ceiling to the table next to his bed. In the dim light, he could just see the photo of him, Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke from so long ago. Next to that was one of him, Gaara, Kankuro and Temari, taken on his first birthday after coming to Suna. Kankuro had a little too much sake to drink and ended up slumped across the sofa. Naruto had a relapse to his pre-genin days and taken the chance to redesign Kankuro's kabuki paint. After Kankuro had come back round, he'd taken one look in the mirror and spent the rest of the day chasing Naruto around Suna. Naruto sat up as the first rays of the sun appeared over the cliffs and slid out of his bed. He crossed the room to his bathroom and turned on the shower. Naruto stripped off the clothes he'd worn to bed and stepped into the stream of water. He leaned against the tiled wall as the water flowed over him, remembering when Gaara had asked him if he wanted to become a Sunanin. 4 years ago, Naruto looked out over the hidden sand village from the balcony outside his room. Gaara silently opened the door and joined him. "What do you plan on doing?" "I have no idea," Naruto muttered. "If you want, you could become a Suna shinobi," Gaara said suddenly as he pulled a headband with the Suna Herglis from his pocket. "Really? Really?" Temari and Kankuro appeared on the other side of Naruto as Gaara offered him the headband. Naruto slowly took the headband and fastened it around his head. "You are part of Suna and our family," Gaara gave Naruto a rare smile as Temari ruffled Naruto's hair in a sisterly way and Kankuro punched his shoulder. Naruto reluctantly turned off the water, he stepped out and wrapped a towel around his waist. He tossed the towel onto his bed and dressed. His wardrobe had changed slightly in the 4 years since he'd left Konoha. Gone was the orange jacket and in its place was a longer sand-colored one that just reached his knees. He slung the jacket around his shoulders and left his room. The castle had taken a while to get used to, Naruto had spent the first week getting lost, but after 4 years, he knew almost every inch of it. Naruto made his way to the kitchen and pushed the door open before he sat at the breakfast table. He pulled a bowl of rice towards himself as Temari and Kankuro entered the room. "Another letter from Konoha has arrived," Kankuro said as he dropped the letter in front of Naruto. Naruto recognized the handwriting as Tsunade's as he unfolded the letter and read. "Brat, I know you're receiving these letters, answer at least one, so we know how you're okay. The council being as stubborn as you are, they're not giving us any leeway in their order of banishment. Jiraiya is still the same perverted hermit he always was, and Sakura, well, she would never admit it, but she really misses you. But Hinata hasn't been the same since you left. She's been wandering round Konoha like a lost soul. Don't worry, we'll find a way to bring you back. Adim Hokage, Tsunade." It wasn't as long as some of the others but it said the same. Naruto folded the letter up again and put it into his pocket before he turned his attention to breakfast. "Why would Hinata miss me so badly? She hardly ever talked to me." Naruto thought as he ate until Kankuro's voice broke into his mind. "Are you ever going to reply to those letters?" he asked. "No," Naruto growled around a mouthful of rice. "They're worried about you," Temari scolded him. "Konoha can go to hell." Naruto stood up so quickly his chair clattered to the floor. He turned his back on the pair and vanished in a swirl of sand. "Sometimes I wish we hadn't taught him the Suna Shunshin," Kankuro muttered, "he leaves sand all over the place." Naruto reappeared in the street below. As he walked through the street, he remembered how strange it was when he'd first arrived in Suna to walk down a street without being called a demon or a monster. Everywhere he'd gone in Konoha, there had always been at least one person who yelled at him. He listened, but no one said anything as they passed him. He wandered through Suna in the vague direction of his refuge, the highest point in the surrounding mountains. The area was a large hollow in the mountains, shielded from the wind-blown sand. Naruto had spent many hours in the hollow honing his skills, the results of his training had earned him a title known throughout the Wind Country. His sheer speed and the sand he left in his wake was one reason he had been given him the name Sunrashi, Sandstorm of the Hidden Sand Village. His reputation was almost as well known as his father's had been. Konoha's Yellow Flash. Naruto had found out the truth behind his father a couple of weeks before his banishment. His mind wandered back to when he'd learned about his parents as he walked. 4 years, 1 month ago. Everything in the archives room was covered in a layer of dust. Naruto muttered something obscene as he put another box of scrolls on a shelf. Sakura coughed as she stirred up a cloud of dust. Naruto took a deep breath and marched into the dustiest corner of the room, disappearing in another cloud of dust. While he was cleaning, he picked up a scroll and absent-mindedly read the words along the side. He paused as he saw it was addressed to him. Naruto thought about it for a moment and pocketed it. He had headed home after finishing the cleaning the archive room. Once back inside his apartment he had unrolled the scroll and a single sheet of paper fell to the floor. He picked it up and realized it was his birth certificate. His eyes went wide as he saw the name of his father, Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage. His mother's name was almost too smudged by dust and grime to read, but he managed to make it out. Kushina Uzumaki of the Whirlpool Country. Naruto shook himself, coming back to the present he realized he'd reached the hollow. He made a well-known hand sign, and he was surrounded by 6 shadow cones. He readied himself as the clones launched themselves at Naruto. Naruto grabbed the closest clone by the wrist and floored it. He planted his foot in the chest of the next and sent it sailing to the other side of the hollow. One of the clones threw a punch at Naruto, he disappeared in a swirl of sand. The clone was slammed to the ground by Naruto's feet. Naruto swept another clone's feet out from under him, then grabbed it by the ankle and swung it into the last 2 clones. Didn't even break a sweat, he sounding almost disappointed. Naruto sat down in the center of the hollow and closed his eyes. He focused on clearing his mind, on wiping all thought from his head. His body felt light as he relaxed. Naruto realized he must have fallen asleep when he jerked awake as he fell backwards. He lay there, spread out in the middle of the hollow for a few minutes before remembering he was supposed to be at the Suna Ninja Academy to see the new students. He stood up and turned towards the village before vanishing in a swirl of sand. He materialized outside the classroom and cursed as he heard voices inside the room. This should make a lasting first impression. Naruto thought, smirking to himself. All the eyes in the classroom were instantly wide as Naruto appeared in his swirling sand. The Chunin instructor glared at Naruto before continuing his speech. The day is the start of your life as ninja. Over the next few years you will learn the basics of the ninjutsu, jinjutsu and taijutsu, and on graduation, you will be assigned to a jonin instructor. Naruto's thoughts trailed back to his time at the Konoha Academy. Dismissed. The Chunin said, bringing Naruto back. Naruto smiled at the students as they bowed and filed out of the room. Gaara came into the room as the last pre-genin left. How are you going to put up with them, Naruto? He asked. They grow on you, Naruto smiled at Gaara, that's what Iruka-sensei said. The sand jonin burst onto the room, heavily out of breath. Hazuki-sama, Sunrashi-sama, there are a group of ninja approaching the village. The weary party of 2 chunin, a jonin, and a wolf-sized dog trudged through the sand toward Suna. The village walls were only just visible in the distance. The group covered their eyes as a sand-laden wind sprang up from nowhere and whipped past them. The wind subsided as suddenly as it had appeared. The group saw 2 figures standing on top of a low dune directly in front of them, one blonde and one redhead. Kiba's mouth dropped open, and Sakura couldn't help but stare. Even Neji found it hard to keep his face impassive at the differences in the blonde. Naruto? Sakura asked. It's been a long time, Sakura-chan, Naruto said. Sakura blinked, it was the name he'd always used to call her, but with little of its former warmth. You just gonna stand there or you heading into Suna? Naruto asked as he and Gaara started to walk back toward Suna's gate. The Konoha ninja pulled themselves together and followed the pair into Suna. Once inside the walls, Gaara led Neji and Kiba to the Kazukiage Tower as Naruto headed for his refuge again, Sakura trailing after him. How have you been, Naruto? She asked. Good. It took a while to get used to the heat though, Naruto smiled. Naruto, Konoha is in danger. Konoha can go to hell for all I care. Naruto spat, see the headband, I'm a Suna shinobi now. Naruto? Sakura couldn't believe what she was hearing. Konoha turned its back on me, so I turned my back on Konoha, Naruto said as he looked away from Sakura. Sakura cast her eyes around the hollow as they entered, she noticed the craters with a spiral pattern along one side. What about all your friends in Konoha like Hinata? She's not been the same since you left. It's like she's a genin again, no confidence, only able to pull off simple jutsus, need I go on? Why would Hinata go to pieces like that after I left? Naruto asked himself. Sakura, let me tell you something, when they banished me from Konoha, somewhere deep down I was happy. Happy to get away from all the insults, always being called a demon. Here I have the respect I always wanted, he said. He sat in the center of the clearing, as he'd done earlier and closed his eyes. Sakura sat down in front of Naruto and closed her eyes, after a while she broke the tense silence. Sasuke's gonna kill me for saying this, but he wants you back almost as much as Hinata does. When he came to, he did his silent and fuming act for almost a month. He claims it's because no one else in the village can be a worthy opponent, but I think it's because you're his best friend. So he's alright then? Naruto asked. Yeah, still the same Sasuke, Sakura smiled, then turned serious again. We've all been trying to reverse the council's decision or find some loophole. Without success, I see, Naruto said flatly. Sounds attacks on Konoha have been growing more destructive, soon Konoha will be destroyed, we need your help, Sakura pleaded. Naruto stood up and took a taijutsu stance, moving through a series of well-rehearsed movements. Sakura also stood and watched him. I'll tell you what, Sakura, evacuate Konoha and bring the villagers here, Naruto said without breaking his routine. Sakura snapped and threw a chakra-enhanced punch at Naruto's head. Naruto's form flickered and he disappeared, leaving only sand in his wake. Sakura looked wildly around and found Naruto on the other side of the hollow. When did you learn that? She asked. About a year ago, Naruto replied, I'm heading back to the tower, you coming? Sakura nodded and followed. That night Naruto's sleeping mind was plagued by nightmares. First, it was the memory of his fight with Sasuke. He was facing Sasuke in the Valley of the End. Sasuke charged at Naruto, Chidori flickering in his hand. The Uchiha seemed to shrink as he got closer. Naruto realized his form had changed, and he was towering over Sasuke as a perfect replica of the nine-tailed fox. Naruto looked down at Sasuke as he smashed his gigantic paw down on him. Naruto stared at the blood seeping out from under his paw. He lifted his paw and woke screaming. After wildly looking around his room, he calmed, laid down and went to sleep. Naruto found himself back in Konoha, and the streets were deserted. Naruto watched, frozen to the spot, as flames rushed past him, burning everything. Naruto looked up as the flames grew higher, engulfing the Hokage faces. The last image he saw was the stone faces crumbling and falling on the village. Naruto sat up in bed again. He saw the sun creeping over the mountains and abandoned any hopes of sleep. He got out of bed and dressed quickly before heading to the kitchen for breakfast. When he reached the kitchen he was surprised to see Neji and Kiba already there. Morning, Naruto groaned, trying to find the coffee. Are you just going to let Orochimaru destroy Konoha? Neji asked bluntly as he pushed the coffee pot towards Naruto. I already told Sakura to evacuate Konoha and bring everyone here, Naruto replied, nearly dropping his mug, but I'm not going back there. Never. What happened to the Naruto who wanted to become Hokage? The knucklehead who wouldn't hesitate to defend Konoha? Kiba asked. That Naruto died in the desert 4 years ago, Naruto replied. You've really severed all your ties to Konoha, Neji muttered. What about Hinata? Kiba yelled. What about her? You dumbass. I can't believe how dense you are. Kiba growled and stormed out of the kitchen. What's up with him? Naruto asked Neji, completely confused. Neji shook his head and didn't reply. A week passed in which Neji, Kiba and Sakura continued to try to convince Naruto to help Konoha. Eventually the team had to return to Konoha. Gaara, Temari and Kankuro said their goodbyes at the gates. Typical of Naruto to be late, Sakura said as she looked back into Suna. Gaara pointed upwards and Sakura looked up to see Naruto sitting on the edge of the wall. Sakura waved to him and he nodded a goodbye. Naruto watched his old friends leave. He waited until they disappeared from sight, then vanished in a sand-laden wind. Naruto grunted under the weight of the beam over his shoulder. Put your back into it. Kankuro called from behind. You put your back into it. Naruto yelled over his shoulder. Naruto had been roped into the construction of the makeshift buildings for the refugees. Even with the village making as much space as possible, there was still going to be a large overflow. The site was bustling with other Suna ninja, all busy building. Naruto crouched as he and Kankuro lined the beam up with the side of the temporary house. The beam slid off Naruto's shoulder and dropped it into the waiting hole. Kankuro wiped the sweat off his forehead and sat down in the shadow of a nearby building. Naruto joined him. Kankuro handed Naruto a bottle of water. How many left? Naruto asked taking a drink. There are 2 here and 6 on the other side of the village, Kankuro replied. I reckon we'll be finished sometime next week. Both of them looked up as Temari walked past, her fan, as usual, strapped across her back. She's off on her travels again, avoiding real work, Kankuro said, not intending Temari to hear him, but she did. Shut it, Kankuro. Temari saw the look on Naruto's face, and don't you start, Naruto. Any idea when the first refugees will arrive? Naruto asked, before Temari had the chance to use her fan on them. Couple of weeks, I'll know more when I get there. And stay out of my room while I'm gone. But that last order, Temari turned her back on the boys. Naruto and Kankuro reluctantly got to their feet again and walked over to the pile of waiting beams. On 3, Naruto said as he grasped the end of a beam. Kankuro did the same. 1, 2, 3. They both groaned as they hoisted the beam onto their shoulders. The setting sun lit Suna in a pale orange glow. The blonde Jonin was relaxing, lying on the roof of the Kazekage Tower with his eyes shut and hands behind his head after finishing the first set of temporary buildings. Suna was enjoying one of its few rains. It wasn't rain as such, more a heavy mist that hovered around the village. Gaara had joined him on the roof, also relaxing in the mist. Temari should be back with the Konoha refugees soon, Gaara muttered. Hansel soon, Kankuro's bodiless voice said, making Naruto and Gaara sit up. The puppet master landed next to the pair. I just got word from Temari, she'll be here before the end of the week. Naruto lay back down as Gaara cursed. Damn it. There's no way we'll be ready in time. He stood and made his way inside. I want everyone working at double speed, no rest until the preparations are ready. Gaara's voice faded, leaving Naruto to his thoughts. Lulled by the rain and the cool air, Naruto soon drifted off to sleep. 24 hours later Temari led the first of the refugees into Suna. Naruto studied the Konoha refugees from a nearby rooftop as they filed past. All were disheveled, walking slowly, and each was carrying large bags. Naruto didn't feel any sympathy for them as he watched them enter. He jumped off the roof and landed in the street. One of the Konoha villagers saw Naruto walking away. He pulled a kunai from his belt and hurled it at the blonde. The kunai struck him on the back, making him stumble and almost fall. He turned around and looked back at the crowd as he yanked out the blade. "Demon!" someone yelled. The village seemed to stop as the shout echoed around the buildings. "Monster!" another person yelled. Soon the villagers all stopped what they were doing and brandished various implements. They moved fluidly, surrounding Naruto. "Leave Sunarashi-sen alone!" a Suna villager shouted. The man made to throw another kunai, but the Suna villagers readied themselves to attack. "How can you sleep soundly at night with that monster here?" Another of the Konoha crowd yelled at the Suna villagers. "We trust him with our lives." Another kunai came flying from the crowd but was stopped by a wall of sand. Naruto's eyes flashed red and he made the lunge at the Konoha crowd, but he found his feet trapped in more sand. He saw Gaara walk past him and stand between him and the Konoha refugees. "You are guests in this village. If you cause trouble again I will not hesitate to throw you back into the desert," Gaara hissed, "and if you ever hurt a member of my family again, I will make you regret the day you were born." Naruto stood as Gaara looked over to him. "Are you alright?" "I've had worse injuries shaving," Naruto smiled. Casting the crowd a final glare, Gaara and Naruto turned from them and walked away. Temari caught up to them and saw the blood on the back of Naruto's jacket. "What happened?" Temari asked in her concerned older sister tone. "The kunai from someone who can't let go of the past," Naruto said, then seeing Temari's expression. "I'm fine, really." "Does their hatred for the fox really run that deep?" Temari asked. "To them, I'll always be the Kyuubi," Naruto growled. As the trio entered the Kazekage Tower, Temari grabbed Naruto and dragged him towards the infirmary. "I told you I'm fine," Naruto protested, but Temari ignored him and pushed the blonde through the infirmary doors. She made him sit on one of the empty bed and called a medical nin over. The ninja pulled Naruto's jacket and shirt off before he could start objecting again. "Temari, you know I heal quickly," Naruto told her. "I know but I still want you looked at," she said, "it's a big sister thing." Naruto shook his head as the medic continued to check his wound. After the medic was satisfied, she stuck a bandage over the wound, then let Naruto redress and go. As he left the infirmary, Naruto's ears pricked as a familiar voice met his ears. He listened harder trying to figure out who it was. Troublesome. Naruto rounded the corner and Gaara's office to see Shikamaru sitting in a chair. "Shikamaru? What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded. "I was roped in by Lady Tsunade, along with Shino and Choji to act as the escorts for the refugees," Shikamaru sighed, "and to deliver a message to Gaara." "Bodyguard and message boy," Naruto smiled. "I heard you had trouble from the Konoha crowd." "It was nothing," Naruto replied. Gaara finished reading the letter from Tsunade. He dropped the paper and turned his attention to Temari, Kankuro and Naruto. "They're requesting as many ninja of Chunin level and higher as we can spare," he told them. "I'll pack the gear," Temari said as she left. "I need to fix Karasu, give me half a day," Kankuro said, and also left. "I'm going to hit the sack," Shikamaru drawled, wandering away. "Naruto, I won't order you to come, but if you want to you can," Gaara said as Shikamaru left the office. "But what about the council's warning, if I return I'll be killed," Naruto said. "I won't let them touch a member of my family," Gaara reassured him. "I'll think about it," Naruto said and vanished. Naruto hefted a support beam onto his shoulder and half carried, half dragged it towards the site for one of the temporary buildings. He needed to be busy to take his mind off the Konoha refugees. "Need a hand?" someone asked. Naruto looked over his shoulder to see Choji. Choji lifted the other end of the beam and helped Naruto carry it to the site. Once the beam was in place Naruto turned to Choji. "Decided to help while you're here?" he asked, wiping sweat off his face. "Shikamaru said I should." Naruto glanced at the sun, high in the sky, and then looked back to Choji. "Want to break for lunch, as if I really need to ask." Choji smiled, "No, you don't have to ask." Naruto led the way through a few streets until they reached an open-air restaurant. The owner smiled at Naruto as he and Choji sat. After a couple of minutes the owner brought over 2 large bowls of ramen. Both ninjas started eating heartily and it didn't take them long to empty the bowls. "Good ramen, but not a patch on Ichiraku," Naruto said as he set down his chopsticks. "Do you miss Konoha?" Choji asked without warning. "There are things that I miss. Rain that's not just a mist, the hot springs, Ichirakaus. And I miss some of the people too. Iruka-sensei and Granny Tsunade, pervy sage." Their conversation petered out as Naruto lost himself in his memories. The dust storm was raging around Suna as Naruto took up his guard position at the gates. He coughed and spluttered as the wind changed direction, blowing right in his face. "I hate guard duty," Naruto muttered to himself, spitting sand. Naruto's ears pricked as something moved in the swirling dust. He peered into the storm but couldn't see anything. Naruto leaned against the wall, bored. He'd almost dozed off when something shot through the sandstorm. Naruto's curiosity got the better of him. He cautiously headed into the storm, eyes flicking around. He launched himself at a shape in the dust and collided with a solid wall of sand. Naruto peered through the swirling dust and realized the shape was Gaara. "What are you doing out here, Gaara?" Naruto yelled over the wind. "Something isn't right," Gaara replied, his words were almost lost in the sandstorm. The suddenly wind dropped as sand around the pair heaved and quaked. Naruto ducked as a kunai burst from the sand to his side. A ninja rocketed at Naruto, shedding sand as he did. He made to ram a blade into Naruto, but he was stopped by a wall of sand. "Ambush!" Naruto yelled, flickering away. More ninja appeared from the sand until there were easily 20. Gaara hurled the ninja he'd caught back into the crowd. The bravest ninja charged at Naruto, who flickered behind him and aimed a kick at his head. The ninja whipped around and caught his leg. Naruto was surprised at the speed of the enemy. The enemy threw Naruto into a dune. Naruto growled and rocketed at the ninja again. He threw a kunai and vanished. Naruto appeared and disappeared, each time throwing kunai at the enemy. Despite his speed, the ninja ended up looking like a pincushion for kunai. Naruto ducked a blow from another enemy as Gaara swept up two of the ninja in sand and crushed them. Naruto cursed as three ninja launched themselves at him. He made to vanish, but a massive hand appeared and slammed them into the sand. Naruto flickered, ending up beside Choji. Another ninja rushed at Naruto, but was stopped dead in his tracks by Shikamaru. "Lights out," Shikamaru smirked as he crushed the enemy's throat with his own shadow. Naruto watched a familiar shape of Karasu land and fire blades into several of the ninja. "Someone order backup," Kankuro asked as he materialized. Shikamaru picked out the sound headband from one of the fallen enemies. "I don't believe these guys followed us out here," Choji growled. "Here I go," Naruto yelled, pooling chakra in his hand as he summoned a clone. The others knew what was coming and backed off. "Rasengan!" Naruto cried and charged, carving a path through the remaining enemies. The others scattered as they saw they were losing, leaving their fallen comrades behind. Naruto had a grim expression on his face as he walked over to Gaara. "I've decided. I'm coming with you, Temari and Kankuro back to Konoha." "What happened to never going back?" Shikamaru asked, overhearing Naruto's words. "Things change," Naruto replied. Naruto fidgeted as he waited with Kankuro, Temari, Choji, Shikamaru, Shino and a group of Suna ninja outside the Kazekage Tower. He walked away from the group, came back and sat on one of the boxes of weapons, waiting to be taken with the reinforcements. "Something wrong?" Kankuro asked, smirking. Naruto didn't reply, just kicked his feet in the sand as Gaara emerged from the tower. "Suna shinobi, move out," Gaara called, leading the way out of the village. Naruto grabbed one of the boxes and merged with the crowd of ninja heading for the Hidden Leaf village. Choji turned to Shikamaru as the person convoy left the village. "Hinata will be happy we got Naruto back," he said quietly. Naruto's ears pricked and he looked backwards. "Speaking of Hinata, why was she so broken up by my leaving?" Shikamaru shook his head in disbelief. "You're by far the densest shinobi in the entire world." The convoy traveled through the land of wind at a steady pace. After a couple of days of walking, the land started to cool and eventually they passed into grassland at the border between wind and fire. The party continued their trek, reaching the edge of the forest that surrounded Konoha. They stopped and set up camp under one of the largest trees as darkness fell. While the camp was being assembled, Naruto sprinted the short distance to the base of the tree and continued up to the topmost branch. He sat on the branch, looking out over the sea of trees. In the distance, there was a pale glow lighting the forest. He knew that light was Konoha. "Am I really doing the right thing?" he asked himself. "They threw me out and now I'm going to help them." As Naruto wrestled with his feelings at the top of the tree, he was unaware that several sets of eyes were watching him. Gaara, Temari and Kankuro couldn't tear their gaze from the blonde above them. "The village better not try anything tomorrow," Temari growled before she went inside her tent. Kankuro retired a while after Temari, leaving Gaara alone in the firelight. The former Tanuki waited for Naruto to come back down, but eventually he too went inside his tent. Naruto spent almost the whole night up the tree, coming down only after he fell asleep and nearly fell. As soon the party slowed as the gates to Konoha appeared, Naruto stared at the gate. The one solid gates were cracked and burned in places. He looked past the gates into Konoha, each building in view was damaged in some way or other, doors were smashed in or missing completely. Chunks of stone were missing from the walls, as if some huge creature had taken a bite out of the houses. Naruto's attention flicked to the crowd of people marching towards the Suna party, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Danzo in the lead. "Welcome to Konoha, Lord Kazekage," Danzo greeted Gaara. "We thank you for your help in this difficult." Danzo abruptly stopped talking as he saw Naruto standing between Kankuro and Temari. "You?" Danzo growled as he summoned an Anbu squad. "Uzumaki Naruto, you were banished from this village 4 years ago. Your return is your death warrant," the lead Anbu said as he advanced on Naruto, followed by the others. They raised kunai and other weapons, preparing to strike. A wall of sand swirled around Naruto, protecting him and threatening to swamp the Anbu as 3 puppets appeared in a cloud of smoke. Temari brandished her fan menacingly as the other Suna ninja drew their own weapons. "Keep your hands off my brother," Gaara said in a murderous hiss. "Brother?" Tsunade stammered. To say she and the others were confused was an understatement. You banished him, we took him in. He is a part of our family now, Tamari explained, her voice also dangerous. And if you touch him, not only will I kill every one of you, but the alliance between Suna and Konoha will be dissolved, Gaara continued. The lead Anbu gulped and backed off, Gaara's sand also retreating. But Danzo tried to object. I need a drink, Tsunade interrupted. I'm barely here 5 minutes and you're already drinking, Naruto smiled, some things never change. Tsunade cuffed a blonde fox over the head, smiling. Welcome home brat, she smiled. The Suna reinforcements, along with Shikamaru, Choji and Shino, were led to the Hokage mansion by Tsunade and Jiraiya, with a thoroughly annoyed Danzo bringing up the rear. As the party reached the Hokage's office they saw a crowd, made of 7 of the Konoha 12, already gathered outside. Naruto's eyes caught the flicker of purple and white as Hinata hid behind her cousin. With a little trouble, everyone squeezed into Tsunade's office. As you all know, Orochimaru's attacks are becoming more destructive by the day, and we can't defend ourselves for much longer without assistance. Anyway, with your help, we can mount an effective counter-attack, Tsunade said. Gaara folded his arms. We're ready to do our part in defending. Who said I would help? Naruto interrupted. All the people around the room stared at him. If you're not going to help, then why did you come back? Danzo demanded. I'm not sure myself, maybe just to see this village one last time before it's flattened, Naruto spoke in a grim tone. Several mouths dropped open in shock, and Sakura growled. You jackass. She yelled as she advanced on him. Naruto looked at her with cold eyes and did his vanishing act. He materialized outside the office and made to head out into the village. Sakura burst from Tsunade's office, looking wildly around for Naruto. The blonde walked away but froze as 2 men rounded the corner. The taller had spiky silver hair and only one eye visible, while the other had brown hair and a scar across the bridge of his nose. Naruto started walking again towards them but froze as he saw someone behind Iruka and Kakashi. The raven hair and almost black eyes were unmistakable, but what really cinched it was the Uchiha fan on his shoulder. Hi Sasuke, Naruto grinned nervously as he reached the trio. Sasuke stared at Naruto, dark eyes devoid of all emotion. Sakura hovered in the background, with Hinata and Ino looking over her shoulder. They were ready to duck back into the office if needs be. Kakashi and Iruka looked like they were ready to intervene if things went sour. Hi Sasuke, Naruto stammered, sounding like Hinata. Sasuke shook his head and walked past Naruto. Idiot, he muttered as he passed. Naruto relaxed as Sasuke continued up the corridor. Iruka closed the distance between himself and Naruto. Iruka-sensei, Naruto smiled. Iruka cuffed Naruto over the head, but not as hard as Tsunade had done. You could have let us know you were alright, Iruka scolded, but his heart wasn't in it. Naruto leaned past Iruka to look at the masked Jonin behind him. Hi Kakashi-sensei. Still have trouble arriving on time I see. It's clear that even 4 years of banishment can't change Konoha's #1 knucklehead ninja. Naruto's smile vanished, being replaced with a scowl. He swept past Kakashi without another word. Iruka and Kakashi looked from Naruto's back to each other. What did I say? Kakashi asked Iruka. Naruto left the mansion and rocketed up the nearest wall. He looked across the rooftops before leaping forwards. Bounding across the same roofs as he had when he was still a part of Konoha was a strange experience for Naruto. The absence of the people in the village made him feel uneasy. Flying past all the places he knew from his genin days, memories he'd locked away long ago burst free and clouded his mind. He dropped down to street level and started walking, passing Ichiraku and the Hyuga and Uchiha compounds. Naruto's feet seemed to be taking him along the familiar streets without any control from him. He passed the academy, normally full of noise from the pre-genin students was eerily quiet. Naruto continued walking through the village, lost in his thoughts. He realized he was in the forest surrounding the training grounds. Naruto emerged from the trees to see the 3 posts and the hero memorial, exactly as he remembered it. He flickered and landed on the top of the middle post and sat. Naruto absent-mindedly looked down and found himself laughing at the memory of Kakashi tying him to the post and saying that he, Sakura and Sasuke, would never be shinobi. Looks like I proved you wrong Kakashi-sensei, he grinned. He shook himself. I will not let sentimentality mess with my head. He thought. They banished me, they deserve everything that's happening. Naruto closed his eyes and focused, drifting into a semi-asleep state. To the outside world, he could have been meditating, but inside his head, he was putting the final changes to an idea. A bird's call jerked him back to reality. He hopped off the post and put his idea into practice. Forcing his wind-based chakra into his hands. He started sprinting. Rushing back into the trees, he shaped the chakra into sharp blades, one in each hand. He slashed at the trees as he passed, leaving sharp cut in the trunks. He kicked upwards and bounced off the trees, heading into the canopy. Naruto burst through the sea of leaves and kept soaring upwards, carried by his momentum. He seemed to hover in the air as he looked at the village spread out around him. After an eternity looking down at his former home, he dropped again. He landed on a branch and used it as a springboard to take off again. He continued to spring through the trees, getting lower with each jump. Coming back down to ground level, he turned and headed back the way he'd come. Naruto skidded back into the training ground, he swung his arm in a great arc, sending a chakra-enforced shockwave towards the target tree. There was a brief second where nothing happened, then a hairline cut appeared in the trunk and the whole tree slid to the left. It hit the ground with an ear-splitting crash. Impressive power and speed, a familiar voice said once the noise had died away, making Naruto turn. Kakashi was standing a little way off, Sakura and Sasuke next to him. Naruto shut off the chakra flow to the blades in his hands as he turned to face his friends. "Not quite the Naruto you remember?" Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded, smiling under his mask. "Tell you what, Naruto, how about you show me how much you've changed?" "Only you, Kakashi-sensei?" "That wouldn't be much fun." Naruto sounded almost bored as he looked up into the sky. "Well, what about me and Sasuke?" "Alright," Naruto agreed, "to jutsu only, and I'll allow you to use your Sharingan." Sakura backed away as the three shinobi took up a fighting stance. Sasuke's eyes brightened to the blood red of the Sharingan as Kakashi raised his headband. "You sure about this?" Kakashi asked. Naruto nodded and did exactly what Sasuke and Kakashi expected him to do and created half a dozen clones. Each of the clones smirked and flickered away in a swirl of sand. Kakashi and Sasuke stared as each of the clones rocketed around them, leaving sand in their wake. Even with their Sharingan, they couldn't keep up with Naruto's sheer speed. Sasuke was knocked forward as Naruto's fist connected with the back of his head. Sasuke whipped around and slammed his fist into Naruto, only to have him disappear in a puff of smoke. "I'm just a clone," he growled. "Keep on your toes," Kakashi warned, "we have no idea what new tricks he's learned." Kakashi took a step backwards as two Narutos tried to kick his feet out from under him, but they ended up kicking each other in the head and vanishing in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke ducked another blow and hammered his fist into Naruto, he vanished. He soon became irritated by the shadow clones and yelled to the still-moving mass of sand. "Stop hiding, idiot, and fight me." Naruto responded by landing in front of Kakashi and Sasuke. He charged at Sasuke, ducking to the left at the last minute. He planted one foot firmly on Sasuke's ankle and the other in Kakashi's back. Naruto kicked off Kakashi and made to slam his foot into Sasuke. Sasuke ducked and his fist whipped out, crashing into Naruto's face. Naruto was stunned for a second, then disappeared in a puff of smoke. Sasuke looked wildly around, Sharingan still blazing. "Where is he?" he demanded. "I think he left at the start," Kakashi smiled as he pulled his headband back over his left eye, he always was a trickster. Naruto made his way back into the village, grinning at having given Sasuke, Kakashi and Sakura the slip again. He wandered through the still strangely deserted Konoha streets. Exactly as if I never left. He thought to himself. His feet eventually led him to his old apartment. He hesitated for a minute as his hand touched the doorknob and then headed inside. As he pushed open the door, he cast his eyes over the familiar furniture and layout, almost identical to the way it had been 4 years ago. Naruto whipped around as he heard someone behind him. Hinata stood in the doorway. Naruto wasn't surprised to see she was blushing. "Then Naruto," she stuttered. "Hey Hinata, long time no see," Naruto smiled before turning back to his old home, "hasn't changed much in 4 years," he sighed. I've been looking after it and keeping it tidy." Naruto looked back to Hinata, puzzled. When you left, I decided to look after your apartment for when you came back." "Why?" he asked innocently. Because I am Naruto." Hinata's blush deepened. Hinata was oblivious to the rumble of a distant explosion, but Naruto's attention was instantly focused on the source of the noise. He vanished in a swirl of sand. "I love you," Hinata finished. Her words floating around the now empty apartment. Sound ninja were swarming through the hole in Konoha's city wall. Konoha and Suna ninja were moving to repel them, and Naruto was watching from the top of the Hokage faces. His eyes picked out the familiar shapes of his friends from the massive crowd of Konoha and Suna ninja. The two armies met and started to battle. The swarm of ninja was scattered every so often by explosions and jutsu. He saw a fireball that could only be Sasuke's doing engulf a large number of enemies as a lightning bolt carved a path through Sound's forces. Naruto suddenly became aware of the sound of the battle. The screams and cries of enemy and friend, he flinched as he heard a female voice shriek in pain. He continued to watch the battle, but had to look away as the sheer number of enemies started force the Konoha and Suna forces back. Naruto turned his back on the cries and made to walk away, only to freeze as a piercing scream echoed through his head. He didn't know for sure, but he was almost positive it was Hinata's scream. "Screw it," Naruto growled as he whipped around and sprinted to the edge of Hokage faces. He launched himself into space. A grin spread over his face as he saw a sound kunoichi unsuspectingly moved into his path of descent. The kunoichi raised a katana to strike at a Konoha Chunin, but she was slammed into the ground as both of Naruto's feet connected with her head. The second he was on the ground, Naruto vanished and joined the fray. Gaara was finding it hard to keep up with the number of ninja pressing in on him. He swamped a number with his sand, but they were almost instantly replaced by more. Karasu lunged into the enemy swarm and fired blades in every direction. Tamari slammed her fan into an enemy, then whipped it round in a fluid motion, opening it and sending a hurricane force wind into the sound army. "Where are they coming from?" she yelled to Gaara. "I have no idea," he replied, swatting another ninja out of the way. Another wave of enemy ninja attacked from the other direction, and Gaara couldn't swing his sand around fast enough to get all of them. The remaining sound ninja were scattered by a rush of sandy wind, and Naruto appeared next to Gaara. "Gaara, I think we need to change the field," Naruto smirked. Gaara nodded as a sand cloud appeared over Konoha. The sound nin didn't have time to react, they were up to their knees in sand before they knew what was happening. The Konoha forces immediately pounced on them. Sakura's fist hit the ground, sending a large team of enemy ninja into the air as Sasuke's lightning-covered fist punched through the chest of another enemy. He tossed the body to one side as more enemies swarmed closer. Before either of them could react, a blonde sandstorm appeared and attacked. Naruto's chakra blades made short work of the swarm. He planted both blades in a sound ninja's chest, then flickered away to take on a different foe. A sound nin that had survived Naruto's assault appeared next to Sakura. He made to ram a kunai into her chest, but was slammed to the ground by Naruto. Sakura had the briefest glimpse of Naruto before he vanished again, leaving a scatter of sand in his wake. He bounded up a wall and over roofs, catching sight of a green blur that he recognized as Rock Lee and heading towards him. Niji's palm impacted against a sound nin's chest, and he collapsed to the ground as Lee's foot sent another sound nin through a wall. Niji cursed at the sheer number of enemies that were massing. "There are too many of them," he grunted, readying himself. The two shinobi looked up in time to see what appeared to be a humanoid sandstorm rushing over them. Naruto, moving at a speed that matched Lee's, barreled into the sound nin, sending them flying. A sound nin threw a punch at Naruto, only to have him vanish in a cloud of sand. He rematerialized behind the sound nin and planted both feet in the small of his back. Niji and Lee watched, mesmerized, as Naruto dispatched the sound nin. He landed in the center of the street, crouched low as the bodies hit the ground around him. He looked up at Niji and Lee briefly then vanished. "Was that Naruto?" Lee asked. "I'm not sure," Niji replied. Naruto continued his rush through the battle, picking off sound ninja right and left. He found a lone enemy and smiled cruelly, summoning 4 clones. "Let's see if I can still do this," he muttered to himself as his clones surrounded the sound nin. "Naruto!" The clones yelled as they skidded low and kicked the sound nin into the air. Naruto launched himself into the air and brought his heel down hard into the sound nin's face. Uzumaki barrage. Naruto finished, landing next to the pulverized enemy. Naruto didn't stop to regain his breath, just launched himself back into battle. As he rushed past other enemies, he heard a cry and instinctively ducked out of the firing line. Summoning jutsu. Bring down the house. A massive toad crashed down into the enemies, scattering and crushing a large number. Naruto's eyes searched for the summoner and found the toad Sannin on a nearby roof. "Hey there, pervy sage." He yelled over the battle, kicking a sound ninja off the roof. "Naruto, heard you were back in town," Jiraiya called as he saw the blonde. Naruto looked back to the fight as the enemy regrouped and advanced again. "Pervy sage, you and the others may want to get to a safe distance," Naruto growled, eyes flashing red. Jiraiya nodded and fought his way through the crowd. Naruto punched another sound ninja into the ground as Jiraiya helped the ally ninja retreat. Kakashi landed on the roof being used as a rally point and turned to Jiraiya. "Any idea what's going on?" "Naruto's probably going to do something dangerous and stupid again." Gaara placed a wounded sand ninja on the rooftop as he landed alongside part of the Konoha force. Naruto glared at the enemy as he saw the last of the Konoha forces fall back, out of his way. Kakashi and Sakura picked out the sand-colored jacket from a safe distance as Naruto grinned evilly. He aimed his palms towards the ground as the sound nin advanced. Sand swirled around Naruto as the others watched. Kakashi's Sharingan picked out Naruto's wind-based chakra in the sand. "You are about to see the other reason why Naruto gained the name Sandstorm," Gaara said. Jiraiya saw the Rasengan appearing in his hands before the swirling sand almost hid him from view. "Sunrashi Rasengan." Naruto yelled as he launched himself forwards, a sandy trail in his wake. A chakra ball impacted against the lead ninja and exploded in a whirlwind of sand, swallowing the entire squad. Kakashi could have sworn it was the Rasen Shuriken from the dome-shaped sandstorm. Naruto reappeared as the chakra-fueled sandstorm faded. Orochimaru paused, looking over the city from the top of Konoha's city wall to where a distinct chakra signature could be felt. "So the fox has returned," he said to himself. 6 ninja, faces hidden by the spreading night, appeared behind Orochimaru. "Lord Orochimaru, our forces are being driven back," one of them replied, circular glasses reflecting the last of the sinking sun. Orochimaru made no movement as he spoke. "Recall the troops. We'll attack again at first light." The 6 ninja bowed and vanished again. Smoke rose from many places throughout the Leaf Village as the last of the fires were doused. Teams of ninjas searched the village, carrying the wounded to the makeshift command center, a set of tents in the middle of the village. The Hokage Mansion, Ninja Academy, hospital and any other building large enough to house the forces having been heavily damaged by the assault. A hurriedly erected campsite had been placed on the site of a former block of houses that was now just rubble. Moans and screams floated from under the white canvas as Naruto carried an Anbu towards the tent. He pushed inside and stopped short, the huge tent filled with row upon row of folding cots, and almost all of them held an injured Konoha or Suna shinobi. Medical ninja were dashed between the casualties. After managing to find an empty bed, Naruto looked up to see Sakura and Hinata. Hinata was kneeling next to a bed, green chakra flowing over her hands. She cursed as the green glow wavered and faded. Naruto crossed to her and placed his hands over hers. "Use my chakra," he told her. Hinata looked up at him, blushing furiously, then turned back to her patient. Naruto pushed chakra into his hands, he felt it flow into Hinata's hands and her using it to heal the ninja. After the ninja was healed, Hinata mumbled an excuse and vanished. Sakura wiped her face and hands as she came up to Naruto. "I thought you were going to let Orochimaru destroy Konoha," she said. "Things change." The burnt orange of sunset had been replaced by the navy of twilight as Sakura and Naruto finally left the medical tent. Sakura had insisted on checking him out after she caught him. She led him through the menagerie of other tents until they found the mess tent. They both entered and found something to eat. "We have to ration and prioritize the little resources we have," Sakura scolded Naruto as he looked disappointed at the small portion of food. "Patience are first priority." "Why do I suddenly wish a sound ninja had managed to hit me?" Naruto asked no one in particular. Sakura shook her head as she left. They looked around for somewhere to sit. There were other ninjas spread out around the tent. Naruto and Sakura scanned the crowd until they found a group of their friends. Neji, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji and Kiba were gathered around a small fire as they ate. They looked around as Sakura and Naruto joined them. I'm beat," Shikamaru groaned, flexing his shoulders. "That attack was brutal," Kiba said around a mouthful of food, even by Orochimaru's standards. Akamaru barked in agreement from behind Kiba. "I took down almost 200 enemies," Lee announced as he appeared, "and I shall do the same again next time they attack or I shall run 300 laps. Don't you ever get tired?" Naruto interrupted. "Never. The power of youth gives me all the energy I need." "Lee, shut up and eat," Tenten told him as she sat next to Neji. The group fell silent as they resumed eating. Sakura finished her food, she saw Naruto was sitting with hunched shoulders as she set down her tray. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "I'm cold," Naruto grumbled. "It's the middle of summer, even the nights are scorching," Sasuke muttered. "It may have escaped your notice, Sasuke, but I have been living in the desert for the past 4 years. But the nights are colder in a desert," Shikamaru countered. "The buildings, rocks and sand soak up the heat during the day, then keep the village warm during the night." The talking faded again, but the atmosphere was lighter this time. Naruto wandered aimlessly through the campsite village, he looked up into the sky as thunder rolled overhead. He watched the black clouds massing on the horizon for a minute, then went back to wandering. Looking up to the Hokage faces, he thought about climbing up there again, but dismissed the thought. "Knowing my luck, I'd probably be hit by lightning." Naruto saw Gaara, Temari and Kankuro and moved to join them. Kankuro was cursing under his breath as he tried to fix one of his puppets and apparently failing. Temari offered Naruto a water flask as he sat, he took it and drank. "That attack seemed a bit over the top," Gaara groaned. "Orochimaru seems desperate to destroy Konoha," Naruto agreed, handing the flask to Gaara. "I heard the Konoha forces talking, they were in awe of your speed and power," Temari smiled. Naruto didn't react to Temari's words, but secretly he was grinning from ear to ear. He finally had the respect he'd craved from his genin days. But there was still a lagging doubt in the back of his mind. Were they just admiring his power or him? The occasional chirrup of a cricket was the only sound in the moonlit training grounds. Naruto was sitting on top of the middle post again. He focused chakra into his left hand, forming it into the blade. Naruto focused on the blade, concentrating on making it sharper and longer. The blue chakra crept forward. He swore as the edges flickered and the chakra dissipated. "That form of chakra has a specific length at which it can no longer maintain its shape," someone said as they entered the clearing. Naruto looked to the source of the voice and saw Sasuke. He looked back to his hand and resumed his training, focusing chakra into his hand again. Sasuke shrugged and sat at the base of one of the other posts. Naruto gave up on his training and looked into the starry sky. He thought back to when this had all started, when he was back in Suna reading the letter from Tsunade. A random thought appeared in his mind as he mentally reread the letter. "Hey Sasuke, you got any idea why Hinata was moping around the village while I was gone?" he asked. "You really are an idiot," Sasuke sighed, "she missed you because she likes you." "So? You, Kakashi-sensei, Haruka-sensei and Sakura must have missed me too. Why should she be any different? Why do I even bother?" Sasuke groaned to himself, I'll spell it out for you. Sasuke stood up, Hinata likes you the same as you used to like Sakura. And the way Sakura, Ino and almost every other girl in the village like me. Naruto blanched, how do you know that? Please Naruto, she practically stalked you. You'd have to be blind or as dense as you are not to notice her. The blonde fell silent, mulling over what Sasuke had said. The more he thought about Hinata, the more obvious it was. Sasuke saw he'd gotten through to Naruto and sat down again. Naruto thought for a minute more before he smacked himself in the head, remembering Hinata trying to tell him something before the battle. I am such a dummy, he muttered. Finally we agree on something, Sasuke smirked, looking up to see a sandy cloud where Naruto had been. Hinata, Shino, Kiba and Akamaru were sitting around the dying embers of the fire. Hinata's body drooped from exhaustion and from depression. She'd finally managed to work up the courage to tell Naruto how she felt about him, and he'd vanished before she could tell him. Akamaru yawned and his ears pricked up as Naruto materialized behind Hinata and grabbed her around the waist. Hi guys. I need to borrow Hinata. Thanks, bye, Naruto said and vanished, taking Hinata with him before Shino and Kiba could react. Naruto. Kiba yelled. Naruto and Hinata reappeared on top of the wall surrounding the village. Naruto let Hinata go and she turned to face him. And Naruto, she stammered, why did you bring me here? So we could talk without being interrupted again, he smiled, now, what were you going to tell me this morning? Hinata's face took on a beetroot hue, I wanted to tell you I. Her voice failed and she looked at her feet, eyes hidden by her fringe. She felt two fingers touch her chin and tilt her head upwards, forcing her to look into Naruto's face. I think I know what you want to say, Naruto said, a friend explained to me. Hinata's face went even darker red, she tried to look away again, but Naruto wouldn't let her. Instead, he pulled her closer. She realized he was speaking again and forced herself to listen. I'm not sure I feel exactly the same as you do, but give me time. Hinata felt lightheaded as she realized her face just an inch from his. She flinched as she felt his arm around her waist again tighten. Go on. A little voice in the back of her head said. Do something impulsive for once in your life. Hinata gulped, closed her eyes and closed the distance between their faces. Naruto was surprised when Hinata kissed him, but he quickly got over it. Hinata broke away after a second, mumbling an apology. Naruto didn't let her go, just kept holding her. After getting used to the man she'd had a crush on since the academy holding her, she relaxed and rested her head against Naruto's shoulder. Naruto let Hinata go and they sat, looking out over the sea of trees. Hinata's small hand found Naruto's and their fingers locked. Hinata, did you really stalk me? Naruto grinned as Hinata went red again and looked away. I should stop teasing, but you're really cute when you're embarrassed. They stayed on top of the wall until the black sky started to turn gray then yellow. Naruto and Hinata's heads turned as one at the barely audible sound of running ninja. Born the village. I'll hold them off, Naruto growled. The sound ninja and the lead smirked as the walls of Konoha loomed over him. He was going to be the first to enter Konoha and start the massacre. Lord Orochimaru would reward him for his bravery and the ninja's thought ceased as both of Naruto's fists slammed into his head and drove him into the ground. The squad that had been following him scattered and Naruto gave chase. Naruto rammed his chakra blades into an enemy before rushing after another. These ninja were smarter than their leader, all scattering in different directions. Naruto summoned a crowd of clones and sent them after scattering enemy. He followed another sound ninja as she dashed away. Naruto burst through a dense patch of bushes and his eyes went wide. There was a massive enemy ninja waiting for him. Naruto gritted his teeth and threw himself into the enemy swarm. Thunder shook the sky as the first enemy fell to Naruto's fists and blades. He flickered from ninja to ninja as fast as he could, trying to form a one-person barrier between the enemy and Konoha. But more by sheer weight of numbers than anything else, they slowly forced him back. Having fun? A raven-haired shinobi asked as he landed next to Naruto, bringing several Anbu squads and a pink-haired Kunoichi with him. Naruto glared at Sasuke. Shut up and help me. He yelled, grabbing a sound ninja by the arm and using him to knock the rest of his squad off their feet. Sasuke's hands followed a well-known pattern and Naruto ducked out of the way. Fire style, fireball jutsu. As the fireball died, the heavens opened and rain poured down on the battle, quickly mixing with the blood of the fallen, turning the ground into bloody mire. Naruto slipped in the mud and the enemy took advantage of his lapse in focus. The wave of sound ninja swamped Naruto, burying him under a black mass of bodies. Sasuke and Sakura stopped in their tracks at a strange feeling, they felt it more than hurted, a deep feral growl. Sasuke realized what was about to happen a second before it did. He just had time to grab Sakura and launch himself out of the firing line when the pile of ninja were scattered by an explosion of crimson chakra. Naruto emerged from the swarm, eyes blood red, whisker scars widened and chakra covering his body, forming a tail shape. The enemy faltered and this time Naruto pounced on them. He, literally, tore into the ranks, decimating their numbers. Sasuke backed away as the remaining strike force split into three, some coming after him, the others going after Sakura and Naruto. The Uchiha Sharingan flickered and changed shape, becoming the distinctive Mangekyou Sharingan. Naruto happened to look back as a surge of black flames engulfed the ninja. He returned to the battle as the bloodlust of the fox inside him took over again, and he charged. Sakura sized up an enemy squad and slammed her fist into the ground. The squad was catapulted into the air as the ground shattered, then fell into the canyon Sakura had created. Sasuke appeared at the other end of the gash in the earth. Earth style. Great Mud River. Sasuke yelled over the thunder. The screams of the sound ninja were smothered as they were buried alive. Sakura smashed her fist against an enemy on her left, sending him flying through the trees. Naruto roared as he rushed through the enemy ninja, dispatching them left and right. He jumped and landed on a nearby tree before launching himself through the sound army like a red bullet. Sasuke turned his bloody eyes on a squad trying to sneak up on him. They froze as Tsukuyomi took effect then dropped to the ground. Sakura grabbed a ninja and swung him over her head then into the ground. Naruto's rage cooled as he realized there were no more enemies coming at him. His chakra tail faded and his eyes went back to their normal blue as walked over to Sasuke and Sakura. As if on cue, the rain lessened and the wind dropped. "When did you get the Mangekyou Sharingan?" Naruto demanded of Sasuke. "Back in the Valley of the End, during our second fight when you beat the hell out of me. I used Chidori against you and, technically, I killed you. The only way to unlock the Mangekyou Sharingan is to kill your best friend, but since you came back, I have a different version than Itachi. So far it looks like I won't lose my sai. I don't know but maybe it's the guilt of killing the best friend that causes the sight loss. Well, now that this is over with let's go and get ramen," Naruto grinned. "Idiot," Sasuke sighed. The group of 4 ninja watched from a safe distance as the Konoha ninja returned to their village. "Lord Orochimaru will not be pleased," the bulkiest of the 4 muttered. "Damn right he won't, he's gonna be pissed," the only girl started. "Watch your language." The big guy interrupted her. "So what do we do?" The ninja hanging upside down from an overhanging branch asked. "We'll have to take them out," the last of the group muttered. "But brother, last time we fought them we lost." This voice sounded identical to the other, as if he were having a conversation with himself. "Are you forgetting that Lord Orochimaru has given us new powers to slaughter his enemies? We had better report," the upside-down ninja said, cracking his 3 sets of knuckles, one after the other. The others nodded in agreement and all vanished. Naruto stretched as he led Sasuke, Sakura and the Anbu members back into Konoha. The group dispersed and Naruto found Hinata waiting for him. He smiled at her as he reached her and held out his hand. Hinata took the offered hand and they walked off together. Naruto yawned as looked for somewhere to sleep, he found a spot under a tree. He led Hinata towards it and sat, leaning against the trunk. Naruto yawned again, closing his eyes and was soon asleep. His head slipped and rested against Hinata's shoulder. Hinata smiled at Naruto before she also closed her eyes. However, unknown to the pair, they were being watched by a young girl with lavender eyes. Naruto slammed his head against a sound ninjas, then booted him back to what was left of his squad. The remaining ninja turned and fled as Sasuke fired several great dragon fire blasts after them. Neji slammed his open palm against a stubborn sound ninja, he choked and collapsed to the ground. The 3 ninja turned their backs on the destruction they had wreaked and walked back to the village. Naruto couldn't shift the feeling that someone was watching him, Sasuke and Neji as they walked. He managed to shake his worries, he stretched and rolled his shoulders as the village walls came into view. "Man, Orochimaru isn't letting up," Naruto groaned as his left shoulder cracked. They entered the village and went their own ways. Naruto weaved his way through the ninja, he froze as a scream met his ears. "How the hell did we lose almost 3 entire Anbu squads?" Tsunade screamed as Shizune wisely ducked for cover. Naruto flickered, dodging a chunk of rubble that Tsunade hurled in her anger. The survivors report that they were attacked by a 4-man cell. "Apparently each of the members of the team had a curse mark," Shizune said, still hiding. Naruto decided to follow Shizune's example and moved out of the firing line. He saw Hinata and walked over to her. "Hinata, can I talk to you?" "Somewhere private," Naruto asked her quietly. Hinata nodded and slipped her hand into Naruto's. He led the way through the village until they reached the training grounds. Hinata was puzzled until Naruto started speaking. "Hinata, before we become any closer, I want you to know something about me." Hinata looked into Naruto's face. "Do you know the story of the 9-tailed fox that attacked the village almost 18 years ago?" Hinata nodded. "Well, the Yonde managed to defeat the fox, but at the cost of his life, by sealing it within a newborn baby." Naruto paused. "That baby was me." Hinata's eyes were wide as Naruto raised his shirt for the proof, the spiral seal. Naruto dropped his shirt back down and looked away from Hinata. This time it was Hinata who made Naruto look at her. Naruto expected her eyes to be filled with hatred or loathing, but all he could see was her love of him. "So that's why the villagers hated you? They thought you were the 9 tails." Naruto nodded. "And during the fight with Sasuke, the fox must have taken control of you to save itself." Naruto swallowed hard, you really don't care that I'm a demon vessel. You're Naruto, and that's all I care about, Hinata whispered, drawing closer. Naruto also came closer to Hinata. She wrapped her arms around his neck as he slid his around her waist. A bird chose that moment to take flight from a nearby tree, scattering cherry blossoms into the slight breeze. Neither Naruto nor Hinata noticed the pink snowstorm as their lips locked. Hinata walked with Neji back to the relatively untouched Hyuga compound, a small smile creasing the corner of her mouth. They entered through the main door and saw Hiashi waiting for them in the courtyard. Hinata and Neji stopped in front of the Hyuga elder as Hanabi peered out from behind Hiashi. Hinata, Hanabi tells me she saw you and that fox together. She also said you and he have become close. Hinata shot Hanabi a murderous glare that Hanabi didn't know her sister was capable of. Hiashi noted Hinata's expression and his frown deepened. Do you even know what he is? Hiashi demanded. He is Naruto Uzumaki, vessel of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and nothing more. Hiashi blanched at Hinata's confident words. She sounded so unlike her normal self. He is the monster that tried to destroy Konoha. No. Hinata said in an icy growl, he may have the spirit of the fox sealed in his body, but he is his own person. That boy may look like a human, but underneath he is nothing but a demon. And your Byakugan is special, letting you see these things. Hinata, you are heiress to the Hyuga family. The future of the family rests on your shoulders, and you think that monster is worthy of your affections. I will choose whoever I want to love, Hinata said, folding her arms. Hinata Hyuga, I forbid you to go anywhere near that fox until you see sense. Until your infatuation with that monster is gone. Then the main branch of the Hyuga ends with me. Hinata yelled at her father and stormed off to her room. Hiashi's visage showed no emotion, but inside he was astonished that Hinata had actually yelled at him. Hinata slammed the door to her room shut and her illusion of strength failed. She sank to her knees, shaking slightly. Hinata couldn't believe she had just yelled at her father. Sasuke launched himself after Naruto. The fox vessel had insisted that he and Neji come with him. Neji came alongside Naruto as they bounded. Naruto, I feel you ought to know that Hiashi-sama has forbidden Hinata to see you. Naruto almost lost his footing. Why? Naruto asked, stumbling on. He sees you only as the Nine Tails. Like hell I'm going to keep away from her, Naruto muttered. The team landed in the clearing they'd created during the last battle. Neji scanned the area with his Byakugan but found nothing. Sasuke and Neji were about to leave Naruto to his searching, but froze as the sound of clapping met their ears. They turned as one to see four figures standing a little way behind them. Sasuke's Sharingan and Neji's Byakugan activated as one, desperate to find a reason why that group was standing before them, but found no Genjutsu or any other illusion. The sound four were standing before them. You're dead, Naruto growled. We were dead, Seiken corrected the blonde, past tense. That was a threat, the fox smirked. Why did he resurrect you? Sasuke glared at the group. More importantly, how did Orochimaru resurrect you? Neji demanded, reanimation. You see, Lord Orochimaru was rather fond of us, and when you killed us that really pissed him off, Tei started. Watch that foul mouth, Jirobo grunted. Shut up fat ass, Tei replied, then turned back to the Konoha trio and continued, so he cloned our bodies, then brought our souls back with the reanimation jutsu. He used our cloned bodies as the sacrifices for the summoning. The result was us, fully revived and alive. But you're forgetting Lord Orochimaru's gifts, Kidomaru added. Yes. Lord Orochimaru has granted us greater strength in order to defeat Konoha, Yukin told the Leaf Trio. Naruto had been discreetly readying himself for a pounce and chose that moment to lunge. The sound four vanished, scattering in opposite directions. We shall battle another time, Seiken's voice floated from nowhere. Naruto cursed as Sasuke joined him. Looks like your instincts were right on the money. That's just peachy. Tsunade growled. Naruto was ready to duck in case she threw something, but there was little space to do it in. He, Neji, Sakura, Shizune, Kakashi, Jiraiya and Shikamaru were squeezed into the tent Tsunade was using as a makeshift HQ. Naruto had barged in, heedless of Neji's warnings, while Tsunade had been briefing them on their patrol routes. Well, at least we know what we're up against, Sakura said. Not quite, Neji said, they mentioned that Orochimaru had enhanced their abilities. Could this day get any worse? Tsunade asked the canvas ceiling. Lady Tsunade. An Anbu captain yelled as he burst into the tent, we've lost contact with Anbu Group 5. I had to ask, Tsunade muttered. That's the squad Hinata was attached to, Sakura gasped. Sakura. Shikamaru. Kakashi-sensei. On my tail. Naruto yelled and flickered out of the tent. Hinata led the Anbu team through the forest, bounding from tree to tree. She paused for a second as she thought she saw something in the leaves ahead and activated her Byakugan. There was nothing ahead, but cries from behind made her spin around. 3 of the 6 Anbu were tied to the tree trunks by what looked like spider's silk. The nearest Anbu screamed as a gold arrow appeared out of nowhere and punched through his chest. Another Anbu's yells were silenced by more webs splattering across his mouth and nose. Hinata could see he was suffocating, but couldn't do a thing as thread swept through the trees, lassoing one of the two remaining Anbu around the neck and pulling him upwards into the canopy. The last Anbu bound to the tree was dispatched by two sickle-shaped blades, rocketed out of the leaf cover and buried themselves in his chest. The last Anbu didn't know what hit her as Kidomaru appeared behind her and slit her throat with a blade made of his gold armor. Hinata saw the Anbu fall to the forest floor below as Kidomaru advanced on her, a blade in each of his 6 hands. Hinata moved into the stance of the gentle fist and Kidomaru backed away. She lunged at the spider ninja, but he parried with one of his blades and slashed at her. Hinata managed to avoid the first blade, but the second cut into her arm, then the third hit her leg. Hinata kicked away from Kidomaru, but he advanced on her. Hinata let him get closer, then pivoted on her left foot and created the dome shield of palms rotation. Kidomaru was sent flying but he quickly recovered. Hinata knew this enemy was too strong for her to take alone, she turned and ran with the spider ninja hot on her heels. As Hinata started to pull away from Kidomaru, her feet were pulled from under her by a rope of web. Hinata found herself falling through the branches until she hit the ground. She was dazed for a second and could only lie there on her back, but she felt Kidomaru pinning her down. Hinata tried to push the spider ninja off, but Kidomaru was stronger than her and had more arms. "I think I'll have some fun with you before I kill you," he hissed. Hinata screamed as she felt Kidomaru ripped her jacket off. "Get your hands off her," Naruto yelled as he materialized a few feet away and charged. Kidomaru didn't have time to move before Naruto's chakra-fueled kick slammed into him. The spider ninja was sent flying across the clearing and slammed into a solid-looking tree, but smashed right through it. Naruto turned his attention to Hinata as Sakura, Kakashi and Shikamaru appeared behind him. "Hinata, are you alright?" Naruto asked, voice soft as he knelt next to her. She nodded and latched onto the front of his jacket. Naruto reluctantly made her let go and used his jacket to cover her. Naruto looked at Kakashi, the white-haired ninja, almost took a step backwards at the look of hatred on his face, while Sakura couldn't help uttering a squeak of fear. "Kakashi-sensei," Naruto growled, an animal note in his voice, "take Hinata back to Konoha and have Granny Tsunade look after her. I'll join you when I can." Naruto stood again and turned to the spot where Kidomaru had been to find him gone. Kakashi picked up Hinata and vanished. Sakura and Shikamaru backed away from the enraged fox vessel, knowing he wouldn't need any help. Kidomaru looked on from his treetop vantage point, his heightened vision allowing him to see every detail of the scene below. He froze in fear as his eyes met Naruto's. The spider ninja could have sworn he was looking into the eyes of the 9-tailed fox rather than another person. Kidomaru shook himself and lined up the arrow in his bow with Naruto's chest. He waited a second and loosed the arrow. Naruto dodged the arrow. He charged and vanished just before he reached Kidomaru. Kidomaru felt himself being hoisted off his feet and thrown towards the ground. He managed to land without injury and looked at Sakura and Shikamaru. "Why aren't they helping?" the spider ninja asked himself. Kidomaru yelled as Naruto's fist slammed into one of his left elbows, the gold armor and underlying bone shattered. Naruto only vaguely realized what he was doing as he pummeled the spider ninja. Naruto ducked Kidomaru's other arms and planted his foot on another elbow, this time on the other side. He kicked upwards and brought his feet down hard on Kidomaru's shoulders. The spider ninja's gold armor may as well have been tissue paper for all the good it was doing. Naruto landed, pulled a kunai from his pouch and buried it in the spider ninja's second last elbow joint. He vanished in sand and reappeared on the other side of Kidomaru. Naruto grabbed Kidomaru's last working arm and forced it in the wrong direction, then leaped away. His rage ebbed enough to see all 6 of Kidomaru's arms were hanging limply at his sides. Naruto found the arrow meant for him in his hand. He rushed forward and rammed it into Kidomaru's stomach. Naruto backed away and summoned 4 clones, they dashed forwards. Kidomaru couldn't react fast enough, he was sent flying upwards. His eyes widened as he saw the real Naruto coming at him from above. Naruto formed a Sunrashi Rasengan in his right hand and roared as he rammed the chakra ball into Kidomaru's chest. The pair crashed back to earth. As they hit, the ground under Kidomaru shattered and a domed sandstorm rose, hiding them from view. The dust and wind cleared, Shikamaru saw Naruto emerge, eyes practically glowing red. They faded back to blue as he reached Sakura and Shikamaru. Sakura made the mistake of looking at Kidomaru's body and wished she hadn't, she wasn't even sure what was left could be called a body. Without a word they leaped into the trees and headed back to Konoha. Naruto entered the village, followed by Shikamaru and Sakura. He saw Kakashi and headed towards him. The blonde didn't even need to ask, Kakashi knew what he was thinking and he pointed towards a smaller medical tent. Naruto swept towards the tent, Shizune standing outside. He saw Hiashi, Hanabi and Niji also making a beeline for the tent, but he was closer. Tsunade left the tent as he reached it. "She's shaken and she has a couple of scratches, but there's no lasting damage," Tsunade said, then stepped aside to let him in. Naruto bolted inside as Hiashi caught up to him. Tsunade and Shizune blocked his path. How dare you let that fox anywhere near my daughter? I let it go that you mentioned the demon this time, but that fox saved your daughter, Tsunade ground out. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if he hadn't been there. Hiashi faltered. That still doesn't change what he is. He is Naruto Uzumaki. A person with the same feelings, fears and ambitions as the rest of us. Hiashi reined in his temper. Tsunade allowed him time to control his emotions, desperately wanting to send Hiashi flying across the village. Hiashi controlled himself and pushed past Tsunade and Shizune into the tent. Hinata was sitting on one of the folding cots and Naruto was sitting next to her. Naruto had his arms around Hinata and she was holding onto his shirt, still covered with Naruto's jacket. Hinata's face was hidden by her hair as she had buried her face in his shoulder. Naruto growled a fox growl as he saw Hiashi enter. Hinata's occasional quiet sob was all that broke the tense silence. Boy, after my daughter has calmed, I want to speak with at the Hyuga compound, Hiashi said and swept out of the tent. Naruto knelt on the floor in front of Hiashi. Naruto guessed the room in the Hyuga mansion was used for training due to the lack of furniture. Hiashi had locked his eyes on Naruto as he knelt down. Naruto was sure Hiashi wasn't blinking. Firstly, I want to thank you for saving Hinata, Hiashi said. Naruto stared. You heard me correctly. Naruto was convinced Hiashi was reading his mind. Now tell me, what is Hinata to you? The question caught Naruto off guard and his mind went blank. What would you do to protect her? Hiashi asked. I would defend her with my life, Naruto said as the words popped into his head. Hiashi stood and made to leave but stopped at the door. You have proved yourself capable of keeping your word so I will allow your relationship with my daughter to continue. He paused, for the time being. Hiashi left without another word. Naruto stood up shakily and managed to get to the door. He took 2 steps out of the room and was almost knocked off his feet. Hinata wrapped her arms around him and held onto him as tightly as she could. Naruto hugged her back. Hinata eventually released her death grip on Naruto and they headed off to find somewhere quiet. The Konoha 12 with their senseis and the Sand Trio stood before Tsunade and Shizune in the HQ tent. The Sound 4's reappearance has thrown an unexpected wrench into our works. Each member on their own is a force to be reckoned with. We must remove them before they can cause more damage. Naruto has already taken care of Kidomaru. That only leaves Taiya, Jirobo and Seiken and Yukin to be dealt with. Lee raised his hand, Lady Tsunade. If I may. Tsunade nodded her approval for Lee to speak. There was another member of the Sound 4. The one with the ability to manipulate his bones. Kimimaro. Well noted my youthful student, Guy said proudly. Yes, well noted. Tsunade agreed, since there are ninja here who have fought the Sound 4 before, they will be charged with assembling teams to take out the enemy have fought previously. You may choose anyone who is best suited to deal with their selected enemy's skills. Shikamaru groaned, Choji gulped and Kiba shuddered. As we don't know if Kimimaro has been revived, Lee will also assemble a team, Tsunade continued, Shikamaru, Kiba, Choji, Lee, I will expect a report as to your choice of teammates before you are deployed. Remember that the Sound 4 said they have been enhanced by Orochimaru, so be on your guard. Dismissed. The shinobi and Kunoichi filled out of the tent and dispersed, going back to their various duties. Your first command my youthful student, Guy bellowed as he and Lee walked away, this is a momentous day. I will not disappoint you Guy-sensei. Lee yelled back. Naruto groaned as he and Sasuke went looking for food. I hope I'm not on his team, Sasuke muttered as the pair reached the mess tent. Same here, Naruto agreed. After Sasuke and Naruto had gotten food they found an out-of-the-way spot to eat. Hey Sasuke, Naruto said around a mouthful of food, what actually happened in the Valley of the End during our second fight? Sasuke stopped eating, you don't remember? Naruto shook his head, the fox took control so I don't know what happened. The simple version is you went 3 tails and beat the hell out of me. They fell silent again, Naruto's guilt stopping him eating. Sasuke noted his expression. In hindsight, I think I needed some sense beaten into me, he gave Naruto a small smile. Naruto's face brightened slightly and he started eating again. Sasuke looked up into the pale sky as he finished his meager rations. Once I'd healed, Tsunade tossed me in a cell and threatened me with punishments beyond imagination. Sasuke continued, many involving letting the villagers loose on me, as you can understand after my desertion, I wasn't best popular. But she eventually decided just to let the Konoha 12 minus you at me. Sasuke shuddered. I've never known Sakura to yell so loud. But Lee was by far the worst, if I heard youth on more time I would have screamed. Sasuke stopped talking and looked back down as he heard someone walking towards them. Shikamaru was standing before them. I've started to assemble my team, he told Sasuke and Naruto, and you're with me Sasuke. Sasuke nodded in reply, Shikamaru turned to Naruto. Just a friendly warning, Lee is thinking about putting you on his team. Naruto groaned, well, at least you escaped Sasuke. Hiashi entered the council room of the Hyuga compound and shut the door behind him. He saw the council had already assembled as he sat in front of them. The Ashi, the elderly head of the council wheezed, "It has come to our attention that your eldest is perusing a relationship not of your choosing." "That is true," Hiashi answered. "We have also heard that the relationship is with the Nine Tails. Is that also true?" The woman next to the elderly Hyuga asked. "Yes, it is. How could you allow the Hyuga name to be connected with that monster?" Another member of the council demanded. "Hinata's actions are beyond my control. She has threatened that if she is not allowed to peruse her relationship, then the Hyuga main branch ends with her. But you have another daughter, she could carry on the bloodline," the female council member voiced. "And break with almost 300 years of tradition," the eldest choked, "only the eldest may carry on the family line." "What about the branch child?" Niji, the last member asked. "Are you determined to undermine the traditions of this house?" The old man yelled. The Ashi remained silent as the council continued to argue. "Enough." The leader silenced the rest of the council before turning to Hiashi. "What is the state of the connection between your daughter and the demon?" "They are close," Hiashi answered curtly, "and he has stated that he will protect Hinata with his life. We cannot allow the relationship to continue. We will not allow an outsider, let alone that monster, into the main branch. And if the pairing produces any offspring are born, we have no idea what effect the demon will have on them. The last thing we want is demons with a Byakugan," the female member of the council muttered. "I believe there is only one course of action open to us," the council leader said in a grim voice. "We must bind her Byakugan and sever all ties with her. Then Hanabi will be your only daughter and rightful heir to the main branch." The Ashi was shocked. True, Hinata was in love with a monster in his eyes, but she was still his daughter, but he was powerless against the Hyuga council. "You may leave, Hiashi," the council leader said, breaking Hiashi's trance. The Ashi stood, bowed and left the council rooms. He walked away down the corridor, unaware that Hinata was hidden in an alcove nearby. And she had heard every word. Tsunade put down Kiba's report on his team. He'd wasted on time on deciding who he would choose. Kankuro, Tenten and Ino. She had to admit it was an unusual combination, but it made sense. Her thoughts were interrupted, but Choji entering the tent. "I have my team ready," he said as he handed her a sheet of paper. "Good," Tsunade said, reading the report. She raised an eyebrow. "You've also got an odd combination." "Lady Tsunade." Shizune called as she appeared in the doorway. "Taiya has been sighted. Shikamaru's team is already en route." "Good. Have medical ninja on standby for their return." At that exact moment Shikamaru, with Niji and Tamari behind him, landed in a clearing to find the redeeted member of the Sound 4 waiting for them. "I've been wanting a rematch with you," she growled at Shikamaru. The Leaf Shinobi and Sand Kunoichi fanned out, moving into their classic attack stances. Tamari brandished her fan, and Niji moved into the gentle fist stance. Taiya planted her hand on the ground, and in a puff of smoke her demon summons appeared. Shikamaru studied the demons as the smoke cleared. Still 3 of them. Each still looks like the last time, but they could have more hidden abilities. Taiya raised her flute to her lips as the pattern of her curse mark spread and the demons advanced. Tamari looked at the nearest demon and swung her fan at. The monster howled as it was battered by the wind. Its howls continued after the wind died. Tamari launched himself backwards as the demon lunged at her. Niji fired off a chakra blast into the demon that was bearing down on him. The monster shrugged off the chakra and raised both its hands over its head. Niji dodged the massive fists and backed away. "What are these things?" he demanded. "These are the demons that she controls with her flute," Shikamaru replied. "Don't let them get too close." "You don't need to get close anymore." Taiya yelled and her tune changed. A new combination. Shikamaru realized, be ready for anything. The demons launched themselves to the edges of the clearing and air around them rippled as the new tune filled the air. Taiya paused for breath, pyramidal wall of darkness. Shadows spread between the demons creating a barrier around the Konoha team. The wall spread upwards, forming a pyramid that shut out the sunlight. Shikamaru was caught off guard by something slamming into him and knocking him off his feet. Tamari's fan was grabbed by hands made of the shadows and they tried to pull it from her, but she refused to let go. "Is this Jinjutsu?" Tamari asked. "No, as far as I can tell, this is real," Niji replied. The shadows parted to reveal Taiya. "Inside this pyramid, the shadows obey my every whim," the redeed said, then the darkness hit her again. "Can you learn to see in the dark?" "Niji, can you see her?" "Barely, I'm having to rely on what I can't see to find her." Niji ducked as a shadow lunged at him. "There's a void in the darkness where she is, but she keeps moving." Niji felt the shadows trying to swamp him. He pivoted, going into a rotation, but the shadow hands grabbed him and tied him down. He smirked. "There's a finite amount of material in here," Niji called to Taiya, "and to attack you must use the shadows hiding you." "Shikamaru, she's 30 feet dead ahead." "Sasuke now!" Shikamaru yelled. A barrage of fireballs erupted from the underneath Taiya, forcing her to duck out of the way. Sasuke burst out of the shadows and his fist slammed into Taiya's stomach, sending her crashing into the middle of the clearing. "Nice try, morons, but you wasted your energy," Taiya growled as she got to her feet. Did I? Sasuke asked, in mock puzzlement. AI realized the pyramid barrier and her demons were gone. She looked wildly around and saw Shikamaru kneeling in front of an unrolled scroll. Since you came back, I decided your demons would be the perfect test subjects for this new sealing jutsu. The only problem is I haven't figured out how to unseal anything yet. AI screamed and her skin turned gray and horns appeared on her head. She raised her flute again and let fly one long note that echoed around the ninja, making their ears and heads ache. Shikamaru covered his ears in a desperate attempt to shut out the noise. Sasuke lunged, feet first at Taiya, but she warped and vanished. He dodged back to the rest of the team. Clever, using that note to hide your attack, Shikamaru noted. Stop admiring the enemy. Temari yelled. The ground under Shikamaru collapsed and he fell into an endless tunnel as Temari was wrapped in trees that grew around her, one branch around her neck. Neji was up to his knees in marsh before he knew what was happening as thorny vines ensnared Sasuke, the thorns burying themselves in his skin. Sasuke yelled as the vines tightened, pulling his arms in a direction they weren't supposed to go. His Sharingan pierced the illusion, allowing him to see the vague outline of Taiya. Sasuke glared at Taiya through the illusion's haze. She stared as Sasuke fought against the vines binding him. The Uchiha managed to get his feet onto the ground and fought against the vine's grip harder. The shape that was Taiya rushed at him, probably with a kunai drawn. At the last second before she could slit his throat, Sasuke lashed out with his knee, slamming his foot into Taiya's jaw. She staggered backwards as Sasuke stood, oblivious to the thorns. You call this ninjutsu? Sasuke called to her, and the illusion shattered. Shikamaru, Temari and Neji got unsteadily to their feet. Taiya snarled and lunged at Sasuke, kunai raised. Your last mistake, Sasuke growled, he blinked, and his Sharingan changed to its Manjutsu form again. Taiya's world's colors inverted and she found she couldn't move. Sasuke appeared before her, he slowly advanced, and 3 more figures appeared behind him. Taiya recognized them as her own summons. Sasuke stopped, each of the demons passed him and closed around Taiya. For the next 3 days you're at their mercy, Sasuke smirked. All Taiya could do was scream as the demons attacked. In the real world, Taiya choked, eyes growing dull and crashed to the ground. Her momentum still carried her forward, her form coming to rest at Sasuke's feet. 1 down, Sasuke muttered. Probably 3 to go, Neji finished. Naruto ducked through the doorway of the medical tent and looked around. He saw Hinata and crossed the tent to her. The latest casualties were stretched out on the folding cots with medical ninja were tending to them. Naruto filled through the tent until he found an empty bed and sat on it. Hinata left the casualty she'd healed, she turned to the next bed and jumped as she realized it was Naruto. Naruto, why are you here? Naruto clutched at his heart, gasped for breath and collapsed backwards into the cot. I need the kiss of life, or better still just a kiss, he chuckled. Naruto, this is no time to be messing around, Hinata scolded. Naruto's sharp eyes noted the redness in Hinata's normally pale eyes. Hinata? Something wrong? He asked as he stood up. She shook her head, bustling around the tent, trying to look busy. Naruto grabbed her wrist and pulled her gently but firmly away from the other medical ninja. What's wrong? Naruto demanded. Nothing, Hinata replied, trying to pull away. Hinata, something is bothering you. You're not doing yourself any favors by denying it. I'm fine, Naruto. Hinata tried to sound normal, but Naruto still wouldn't believe her. The blonde caught Hinata off guard by grabbing and hugging her close to him. I'm not letting go until you tell me what's bugging you. Hinata felt her eye filling with tears again and buried her face in Naruto's shoulder. Naruto waited patiently, holding Hinata's shaking form as she continued to sob. Eventually Hinata ran out of tears and looked up at Naruto. Naruto loosened his grip on her and wiped the last tear off Hinata's face with his thumb. Now, what's the matter? Hinata's voice was almost inaudible as she spoke. The Hyuga Council called a meeting with my father. Somehow they found out about us, Hinata teared up again, they're saying that if we stay together, they'll bind my Byakugan and disown me. Hinata expected an outburst from Naruto, but he went quiet, she looked up into his face and gasped. Sakura chose that moment to look up from her patient and she saw Naruto. Even from the other side of the tent, Naruto's feelings were abundantly clear. The anger in his eyes and his lips curled into a snarl made Sakura think he was going to go 4 tails. She was about to go over to the pair when Naruto controlled his anger and looked at Hinata again. How can they do that to you? It's tradition. If a female member of the main branch marries outside the family, they seal her Byakugan. And your father is just going to let them disown you. He only sees you as the fox, and Hanabi's always been his favorite. If I didn't think it'd hurt you, I'd go and beat some sense into the Hyuga Council and your father. That wouldn't do any good, Hinata muttered, burying her face in Naruto's shoulder again. An idea occurred to Naruto, Hinata, what if you and I just vanished? They can't seal your Byakugan if they can't find you. Hinata looked up again. But if I leave, I'll be a missing nin, and where would we go? If we talk to Granny Tsunade, she'll understand. We just vanish, here one day then gone before anyone knows what happened. Where would we go? Suna. Gaara, Tamari and Kankuro are practically family, they won't turn you away. I doubt the council will let me hang around after Orochimaru's gone anyway. Hinata didn't get a chance to think Naruto's plan over as Naruto took hold of her wrist and dragged her out of the tent. Dawn's bird calls were interrupted by the sounds of battle. Kiba's team were engaging their targets in a patch of rocky ground at the edge of the forest. Hang over Fang. Kiba bellowed as he and Akamaru rushed at Seiken and Yukin. Seiken launched himself out of the way and made several hand signs. Parasitic touch, he muttered and rushed at Kiba as he stopped spinning. Red chakra spread over Seiken's hands as he got closer to Kiba. Kiba dodged backwards, avoiding any blow the pale-haired man tried to land. Seiken's fingers grazed Kiba's arm. Kiba yelled in pain and slammed his foot into Seiken's face, using him as a springboard. He landed next to Kankuro as Seiken was sent flying backwards. Kiba pulled his jack sleeve up to examine the wound and stared in horror. The cut was only small, but already there was a black mark spreading across his skin. Kiba felt his muscles twitch and his arm threw a punch at Kankuro. The blow was blocked by Karasu's arm. "What are you doing?" Kankuro yelled at Kiba as he aimed another blow. "It's not me." Kiba grabbed his possessed hand, "They must be controlling me." Seiken managed to get to his feet, the pattern of his curse mark spreading, when a hail of kunai forced him to dive for cover. He cursed as several of the blades cut into his arm. Ino joined Kiba as he restrained his arm and she started trying to heal the infection. Kiba's arm lashed out at Ino, catching her in the stomach. Kiba grabbed his wrist again as Ino got back to her feet and started fighting the infection again. "Sorry," Kiba grunted. Denton readied another volley of weapons to cover Ino and Kiba as Yukin appeared from her left, first raised to strike. She managed to dodge the blow and rammed a blade into his shoulder before distancing herself. "You think you're the only one with projectiles?" Yukin snarled, moving as if to reach inside his clothes. The skin on his forearms rippled where the curse mark had turned it black, then sharpened into spines. "Viral darts." Yukin screamed, flicking his arms and sending the spines flying at Tenten. Tenten ducked the spikes, but as they hit the ground behind her, they exploded into a crimson mist. She coughed and covered her mouth as the mist floated around her. "That mist is made of particles of my own blood. Even when separated from me, I can still control those cells. Every time you breathe in, more of my cells get into your body and rip it apart from the inside." Yukin sneered as Tenten's knees gave out and she sank into the mist. Kankuro saw Tenten fall, he swung Kurori around and grabbed her with the puppet as Yukin moved in for the kill. Yukin tried to go after Tenten, but Karasu appeared in front of him and rammed a blade into his chest. The markings on his body darkened and spread as he went into level 2. Kiba pulled a torn piece of material around his arm tight as Ino turned toward Seiken's hiding place. Akamaru whimpered, causing Kiba to turn and see Yukin's form changing. Kankuro pulled Karasu back as Yukin grabbed the puppet and pulled the blade from his chest. The wound from the blade closed and Yukin fired another barrage of darts, this time at Kiba. He grabbed Ino and launched himself away, dodging the needle-like darts and the red mist. Ino pulled an explosive tag and kunai from her pouch and hurled it at Yukin. The blade buried itself in Yukin's arm, his eyes widened as he saw the tag, but he couldn't react fast enough. The blast sent rock chunks flying in every direction. The team regrouped as the smoke cleared and Yukin reappeared. Kiba called to his teammates as he took his four-legged stance, "This is when they're at their most dangerous. Stay sharp." Yukin's burns and wounds caused by the explosion healed before their eyes. Yukin cracked his neck and Seiken rushed out from his hiding place, red chakra covering his hands again. Karasu, Kurori and Sanshao blocked Seiken's attack and he retreated again. Kiba made to go after Seiken, but Yukin moved to Black Death missed. Yukin roared, spewing what looked like black smoke from his mouth. Kiba's team backed away again as one when they saw the plants under the cloud dying. Seiken emerged from his hiding place again, joining his brother on the rocky mound. "Ino," Kiba quietly signaled. The blonde nodded, readying the technique known only to her clan. "Mind destruction jutsu," Ino breathed. Yukin's eyes glazed as the jutsu took effect and he stopped belching poisonous smoke. "Brother, why?" Seiken was cut off as Yukin's hands whipped out and wrapped around his neck. Seiken was forced to his knees by Yukin's curse mark strength. He countered by shifting his own curse mark to the same level. Ino was ready for the change and put the second part of their plan into action. Yukin released his grip and bashed into his brother, merging with him. Seiken choked as Yukin was forced to empty his toxins into his twin. Tenten managed to struggle to her feet and took aim. Seiken's face went white and blood trickled from his mouth as he watched Tenten. She launched herself high into the air and Kankuro sent Karasu after her. Tenten and the puppet unloaded everything they had into the twins in a matter of seconds. Seiken and Yukin fell to their knees, then tumbled to the bottom of the rocky mound, blades and other weapons sticking out at every angle. "Forgive me, brother," Yukin gasped with his last breath and then lay still. Tenten's stamina failed and her vision blurred as she fell back to earth. Kiba managed to catch her before she hit the ground. Kankuro approached the body of the twins and briefly checked for vitals, but found none. Mission complete, Kankuro told Kiba as he returned. Kiba nodded and rocketed off towards the Leaf Village with the rest of his team in tow. Tsunade and a medical team were waiting for the team as they reached the Konoha gates. Kiba handed Tenten to the medics with a brief explanation before they rushed off to the medical tent. Targets eliminated, Kiba reported, turning to Tsunade but not looking at her. You did well, she told him. Then added, Tenten will be fine. The team entered the village and made their way through the tents until they found the other ninja and joined them. Kiba sat apart from the rest of the group, he couldn't get his mind off Tenten. She'll be fine, a familiar voice added. Kiba jumped, he'd been so lost in thoughts he hadn't noticed Shikamaru sitting down next to him. Remember the first time I led a team? Yeah, I was on it, Kiba muttered. Well, almost every member of my team ended up in the hospital, you included. I felt like I'd failed as a leader. But you only had one casualty, and Tenten wasn't badly hurt. You did a good job. Shikamaru stopped speaking as Niji and Lee sat opposite them. Kiba, Tenten is stronger than you think, Niji said flatly, she will not give up without a fight. But right now, you are the greater casualty. We can't afford to lose morale now, Lee told Kiba. An Anbu member appeared and walked up to Choji. Assemble your team. Jirobo has been sighted. Lee, Sakura, with me. Choji called. Ara was in idle conversation with Tamari when Naruto appeared with Hinata behind him. The former Tanuki raised a non-existent eyebrow as the nervous-looking pair approached. Ara, would you allow a fugitive from Konoha to take refuge in Suna? Naruto asked as he reached them. Not normally. Why? Gar replied. Hinata's father and the Hyuga Council are planning to bind her by Akigan and throw her out if she is with me. Even with a Dijutsu, some people refuse to see what's right in front of them, Gar sighed. Say the word, Tamari told Hinata, and I'll blow them away. They'll be halfway to Suna before he knows what's happening. Hinata gave a weak smile at the thought of her father and the council flying over Konoha. If Hinata is the fugitive you are talking about, then I have no objections. See, told you, Naruto grinned at Hinata, now all we have to do is talk to Granny Tsunade. I'll come too, Gaara said as he stood. Naruto led the way through the tents until they reached Tsunade's. Shizune left the tent and saw the solemn-looking party. She knew better than to try and stop them, so she just held the tent flap open for them. Tsunade finished debriefing the Anbu squad and turned her attention to Naruto. She smiled, I knew you'd come to bother me today. You won't be smiling after I tell you why we're here, Naruto said. Naruto and Hinata told Tsunade the story, her face darkened as the story continued. The second the word disown slipped from Naruto's mouth, she exploded. Be what? Tsunade shouted, I swear, if he wasn't a noble I would. She cracked her knuckles menacingly and glared at no one in particular as Hinata took refuge behind Naruto. I do not believe how stubborn the Hyuga family can be. Tsunade yelled to the heavens, no offense, she added, looking at Hinata. So what do we do? Leave it to me, Tsunade told them, we'll find a solution. Naruto suggested that he and Hinata leave. Hinata's Byakugan can't be sealed if she can't be found. And I'm willing to offer her sanctuary in Suna, Gaara told Tsunade. We'll keep that as a last resort. Before we do anything, I want a word with Hiashi. Toji, Sakura and Lee rushed past the Anbu at the Konoha gates and launched themselves into the trees. I appreciate you coming along Lee, Choji said as Lee came alongside him and Sakura. It is no problem. From what you have told me of this Jirobo, we need all the power we can muster. I just hope Kamimura doesn't choose now to appear, Sakura breathed. Remember, we don't know if he has even been resurrected, Lee noted. All three ninja fell silent as they saw a large shape bounding through the trees ahead of them. That's him, Choji growled, keep back until we have a clear shot. They followed Jirobo at a safe distance until he emerged from the trees into one of the old battle sites. The large area had been torn up by the fierce battle, offering little cover. Choji held up his hand to stop his team at the edge of the tree cover. Jirobo looked around the battlefield as Choji's team took their places. Oh! Choji yelled and the team rocketed out from the canopy. Jirobo turned as the leaf ninja appeared. Hey, fat ass. Remember me? Choji called. Choji didn't give Jirobo time to reply before he smashed his massive fists down on him. The sound ninja cursed as he was released from under Choji's fists and the leaf team landed in front of him. Lee crouched, undoing the weights at his ankles. He stood again, weights in his hands. Hatch, he called as he threw his weights. They caught Jirobo in the stomach, sending him skidding backwards. Jirobo regained his footing and glared back at the leaf ninja to find they'd gone. Lee's feet slammed into the back of his head. He whipped around to slam his fist into Lee to find he'd vanished. Lee appeared again and punched Jirobo's stomach. The pattern continued until Jirobo managed to grab his arm and slammed him into the ground. Any last words? He asked Lee, wiping a trickle of blood from the side of his head as he stepped on his neck. Jirobo raised his leg to slam it back down on Lee when the ground underneath him was sent flying into the air. Sakura grabbed a chunk of rock and hurled it after Jirobo. Jirobo righted himself in the air and grabbed the rock before it hit him and sent it back to Sakura. She shattered it with a chakra-enhanced punch. Jirobo landed with an immense crash and his curse mark spreading over his body. The sound ninja snarled as he got back to his feet. Earth-style, rock tsunami. Jirobo yelled, slamming both his fists into the ground. The ground heaved, forming a massive landslide that surged toward Sakura, Choji and Lee. Sakura hammered her hands into the ground, raising a barrier of earth. Choji led the way in ducking behind the earth wall, followed by Lee and Sakura. The earth wall roared towards the team and impacted against Sakura's wall. The team held on as the earth surged past on either side of the wall. As dust cleared, Sakura stood up and looked wildly around, trying to find Jirobo. She was caught off guard as he appeared and grabbed her neck. The sound ninja lifted her clear off the ground, then tightened his grip, squeezing the air from Sakura. Lee aimed to kick at Jirobo, but was batted away by Jirobo's free hand. Choji moved to ram Jirobo with a human boulder, but stopped as he realized Sakura was in the way. Jirobo took advantage of Choji's dilemma and kicked him away. "Hey fatso." Jirobo turned to see Tsunade standing behind him. "Take your hands off my student." Tsunade yelled and rushed at him. "If you want her so bad, then take her." Jirobo shouted back, throwing Sakura across the clearing. Tsunade leaped after Sakura and caught her with ease. She landed next to Lee and Choji. She put Sakura down and advanced on Jirobo again. "Earth barricade." Jirobo yelled as he crouched, the earth rising to shield him. Tsunade aimed at the rock barrier and shattered it with a well-placed blow. Without missing a beat, Tsunade slammed her foot into Jirobo. The sound ninja shattered into earth. "An earth clone," she muttered. Tsunade turned as Jirobo appeared next to her and they both moved to land blows, but their fists met. Sakura, Choji and Lee dived for cover as the shockwave created by the meeting fists rushed towards them. They looked out to see both ninjas standing at opposite ends of the battleground. Tsunade and Jirobo rushed forward at the same instant. At the last second, Jirobo dodged to the side and planted his hands flat to the ground. Encircling rampart. The ground Jirobo was standing on rose, forming a sheer cliff face, forming a solid wall of rock around Tsunade. Tsunade sprinted towards the cliff and continued up it. Rock barrage. The edges of the cliff started to crumble and fall towards Tsunade. She responded by slamming her fists into any rocks that came anywhere near her. One rock came straight back at Jirobo, catching him in the face and knocking him off balance. He recovered just in time to have Tsunade's chakra-fueled punch send him flying. He tumbled to the foot of his cliff, Tsunade landing gracefully next to him. Jirobo's curse mark covered his body and his hair grew as he growled at Tsunade. He grabbed a rock from his failed landslide and hurled it at Sakura, Choji and Lee. Tsunade rushed forward and shattered the missile. Final resting place, Imperial Mausoleum. The earth shifted under the team, then it dropped from under them, forming a deep hollow. Jirobo grabbed the earth in front of him and heaved. The earth gave and he hoisted a massive weight of earth over his head. He walked over the hollow and was about to slam the earth down and bury the leaf ninja when a something hidden in a blast of smoke knocked him backwards. Summoning jutsu. The smoke dispersed, revealing the giant slug and Tsunade standing on its head. Jirobo stood, anger bursting out of him. He sprinted towards the slug and gabbed the front of Kitsai. Tsunade almost lost her balance as she felt her summoned creature lurch. Strength isn't working, so maybe this will. She thought as she launched herself into space. Tsunade focused chakra into her hand, forming the trademark chakra scalpel of a medical ninja. Jirobo glared up as Tsunade fell towards him. He raised an arm to strike, but it dropped limply to his side as Tsunade severed his nerves. Jirobo tried to use his other arm, only to have Tsunade sever the nerves in that arm too. Tsunade slashed Jirobo's knees and they crumpled, making him crash to the ground. She stood over Jirobo as he struggled against his own body. Her eyes widened as Jirobo managed to get into a kneeling position. "Even if I die, Lord Orochimaru will destroy you." Jirobo growled. "The fire of the Leaf Village will burn forever." Tsunade replied. Tsunade landed a strike on Jirobo's chest, just above his heart. Jirobo choked and dropped to the ground. "You three alright?" Tsunade called to the team. They nodded. "Then let's go home." The walls of the Leaf Village were battered and broke, but they still stood high, as if in defiance of the Sound Village's attacks. Ninja, from Anbu to Chunin, were scattered around and on top of the walls, keeping guard as the sun glared down from high above. Chunin twitched as something moved in the forest, but he dismissed it as an animal. He missed the shadow creeping along the bottom of the wall, leaving explosive tags in his wake. The Chunin stood again as the same movement in the forest caught his eye. He was about to raise attention to it when a blade erupted from the foliage and buried itself in his neck. He choked and tumbled to the bottom of the wall. An expressionless face watched a ninja that hit the ground and raised a blade with another tag wrapped around it. He hurled the blade at the wall and it exploded before it touched the stone, setting off the other explosives. The stone of the wall crumbled and collapsed, creating a path for the attack. The sullen-faced man raised his arm above his head, then swung it forward. Large silhouettes materialized from nowhere and dashed into Konoha. The heads of the Konoha turned as one, and they all looked towards the plume of smoke rising over the remaining rooftops. Sasuke cracked his knuckles as several Anbu members rocketed overhead. "Looks like we're on," he muttered and led the charge. Naruto and Sakura bounded alongside Sasuke as they followed the Anbu. As they reached the scene, Naruto had to do a double take. Each of the soldiers looked more animal than human. The creature leading the pack had tiger-like fur covering his arms and claws on his fingers. Sasuke's face turned grim as he studied the enemy. Orochimaru's test subjects, he growled, then turned to the others. "Listen up, these creatures aren't human anymore, and they're completely out of control. The only thing we can do is put them out of their misery." The others nodded and they joined the battle. Naruto dispatched the first of the creatures with his chakra blades. Its form became more human as it collapsed. Sasuke launched himself into the air, raining fireballs down on the crowd of creatures. Kiba and Akamaru rocketed through the monsters, scattering them in all directions as Lee kicked another creature into the air, bringing it back down with a primary lotus. Sakura grabbed a monster with crab-like armor as it tried to strike her. She swung it over her shoulder and into the ground. Its armor shattered and it lay still. Ruby eyes fixed on Lavender as a wolf-headed beast saw Neji and lunged. The beast was flung backwards by Neji's rotation, crashing into more of Orochimaru's monsters. Naruto was caught off guard by a scorpion-tailed creature springing out of the ground beneath him. He landed in a pile of sand and looked around to see Gaara leading the sand forces into the attack. Naruto got back to his feet and rocketed at the scorpion again. He severed the creature's tail and slashed its throat. Naruto saw the vast number of monsters pouring through the hole in the wall as the scorpion fell and his face darkened. "The sandstorm is coming," he growled and flickered, leaving a flock of shadow clones in his wake. Sasuke made to slam his fist into an enemy, but it was sent flying backwards by a yellow blur. Naruto moved faster than ever before, forming a one-person barrier between the monstrous enemy and the Konoha forces. The Konoha and Suna ninja pulled back and prepared for the second wave. "Finally found a way to channel his hyperactivity," Kakashi said as he appeared next to Sasuke. The Uchiha saw Naruto's speed drop and the creatures behind the human wall massing. Kakashi gritted his teeth. "Sasuke, when the wall falls we'll cover Naruto's retreat." Sasuke nodded, creating a Chidori as Kakashi formed a lightning blade. Several puffs of smoke were the cue for the lightning-wielding shinobi to rush forward and carve twin paths through the enemy creatures. Naruto appeared next to Sakura, panting heavily and chakra blades flickering. He wobbled. Sakura grabbed him before he fell. "Naruto, you alright?" she asked. "Yeah," Naruto muttered, forcing himself to stand on his own. "Keep it up." Neji called as he felled another monster. "Their numbers are falling." The mass of monsters Kakashi and Sasuke had missed thundered towards the Konoha ninja. "Retreat," Sakura ordered, launching herself out of the path of destruction, the other ninja following her lead. Sakura looked back and saw Naruto hadn't moved. "Naruto!" Sakura screamed, "Get out of there." Naruto raised his arms over his head, crossing his forearms as he did. "Hawks. Chakra. Now." Naruto screamed inside his head. Naruto felt a blast of red chakra surging down his arms and he shaped it into his blades, adding his wind element at the same time. Orochimaru's monsters continued their advance, oblivious to the shinobi in their path. With a roar that would have made Shukaku shake, Naruto swung his arms down in a great arc and sent an X-shaped shockwave racing towards the beasts. The shockwave slashed through the crowd of beasts, devastating their ranks and scattering them in all directions. Most were dead before they hit the ground. Naruto didn't get the chance to relax as another large crowd advanced on him. Naruto flickered again, dispatching enemy after enemy. From his vantage point, Sasuke's Sharingan saw Naruto was slowing. Kakashi also seemed to have noticed Naruto's drop in speed. "He's running out of chakra," Kakashi muttered. "Well, at least the enemies are running out," Sasuke noted. Naruto slammed his foot into a wolf-headed creature and it crumpled under the blow. Naruto looked around and found the enemy forces were crushed. His chakra blades faded as Kakashi, Sasuke and Sakura landed next to Naruto. Kakashi looked at the devastation caused Naruto's attacks. "I think you went a little overboard," Kakashi smiled. Naruto managed to return the smile before his knees gave out. Sasuke grabbed Naruto, hauled him back to his feet and helped him stand. "Moron. That's what you get for using all your chakra playing hero," he scolded. The chakra spike made all four heads looked around as one. The dust and smoke cleared to reveal a figure appeared in the midst of the destruction. His blank stare sent a shudder down Naruto's back. Gaara and Lee appeared in front of Team 7, scowling at the last of the Sound 5. Kimimaro shrugged off his jacket, letting it fall to the ground, and started walking slowly towards Gaara and Lee. Naruto forced himself to stand again but almost collapsed. "Naruto, with your chakra drained, you're in no condition to fight," Kakashi warned. "Lee chose me to fight Kimimaro, and that's what I plan to do." "Idiot." Sakura yelled, "Do you want to get yourself killed?" "I won't die, Sakura," Naruto grunted. "I haven't beaten Orochimaru into a pulp yet." Naruto came up behind Gaara and Lee. "Get out of here," Gaara ordered Sakura, Sasuke and Kakashi, "this will be ugly." "Watch yourselves," Kakashi said, and they vanished. Gaara's sand swirled around his feet as Kimimaro stopped walking, Lee removed his weights, and Naruto's eyes went red. Kimimaro moved as a blur, rocketing towards the team with bones forming claws over his hands. Lee and Naruto launched themselves out of the way as Gaara grabbed Kimimaro with his sand and threw him backwards. The bone over Kimimaro's hand shattered and he launched the shattered remains at Gaara. The Redeed parried with sand as Naruto went on the attack. Kimimaro pulled a bone from his arm and held it like a kunai. Naruto slashed at Kimimaro with his chakra blade, but Kimimaro blocked with his blade. The sound ninja's eyes went wide as Naruto's chakra blade cut through the hardened bone. Lee appeared behind Kimimaro and slammed his foot into him as Naruto landed a punch. Both Leaf Ninja cursed as they hit bone and flickered away. As they vanished, Kimimaro saw the cloud of sand hovering over Gaara. The sand clumped together and hurled itself at Kimimaro as sand shuriken. "Dance of the Lily," Kimimaro called, holding both his forearms together. Bone spread over his arms forming a large shield. The sand impacted against the bone, scattering in all directions. Kimimaro emerged from behind his shield, he separated his arms from the bone and hurled the two halves at Lee and Gaara. Naruto materialized in front of Lee before he could react, cleaving the shield in two as Gaara caught and crushed the other with his sand. Naruto and Lee rushed at Kimimaro again as Gaara hurled more sand shuriken to cover them. Naruto created several shadow clones and flickered with Lee. Kimimaro crouched low to the ground. Dance of the Willow. Bone lances emerged from Kimimaro's joints, spearing all of the onrushing clones. He was caught off guard by Naruto and Lee landing on his back feet first, but recovered and sharpened his spine into more spikes. Naruto and Lee leaped away, landing near Gaara. Kimimaro growled, his curse mark spreading over his body. Kimimaro launched himself high into the air. Dance of the Cherry Blossom. The white-haired man's arms rippled and razor-sharp bone fragments emerged from his skin. Kimimaro spun in the air, sending the fragments everywhere. Gaara's sand formed a barrier against the blades, but they ripped straight through it. He cursed as the fragment cut his cheek and right shoulder. Lee and Naruto ducked behind rubble as the bone shards filled the air. Naruto looked out as the rain of fragments eased and died. He saw Kimimaro reach behind his neck and, with a cry, pull his spine out. Naruto rushed at the sound ninja, chakra blades ready. Kimimaro dodged the blade and swung at Naruto, catching him in the stomach. Naruto was sent flying backwards into a wall, blood trickled from gashed in Naruto's chest left by the whip. Naruto flickered as another rain of bone shrapnel was aimed at him. Finger bullet drill. Kimimaro raised his hands and fired a volley of bones at Gaara. Gaara countered with a wall of sand, but only just managed to stop the bones. Kimimaro snarled and all his skin rippled. The Leaf Ninja's eyes widened as Kimimaro's skeleton seemed to step out of his skin. Bone clone. The skeleton rushed forward, and Gaara raised a sand wall to protect the team. It plunged through Gaara's sand wall, forcing the trio to scatter. Dance of the Orchid. Bones emerged along Kimimaro's shins and forearms, sharpening into blades. Kimimaro lunged at Lee, who dodged, using elegant movements to try and slash him. Naruto added wind chakra to his blades, as the skeleton chose him as its target. He severed the skeleton's arms as it tried to land a blow on him. Naruto kicked the skeleton's skull and sent it stumbling backwards. "How does it stay together?" Naruto asked Gaara. "Must use chakra strings." Gaara muttered. Naruto leaped forwards, and his chakra blade cut the skeleton clean in two. Seeing his clone fall, Kimimaro redoubled his attacks on Lee. Naruto glared at the bone-wielding ninja, pulling chakra into his hands and creating a spinning sphere. Kimimaro saw Naruto's actions and kicked away from Gaara and Lee. Dance of the Rose. Petals. Bone plates emerged from Kimimaro, growing two for a perfect sphere. Naruto's Sunrashi Rasengan slammed into the bone shell and erupted into the domed sandstorm. Naruto's smirk faded with his sandstorm as he saw the bone shroud was still whole. Dance of the Rose. Thorns. Kimimaro's voice echoed from inside the bone shell. Naruto launched himself away from the bone sphere just as the surface changed and spines shot out in every direction. Naruto cursed as he rejoined Gaara and Lee. "His defenses are greater than before," Gaara muttered. The bone shell shattered and Kimimaro rushed into the open. Gaara reacted instinctively, making his sand grab Kimimaro's ankle and pull his feet out from under him before hoisting him into the air. Gaara slammed Kimimaro into the remnants of a building, shattering the bricks under the sound ninja. Gaara continued to batter Kimimaro off the rubble and ground in the battlefield, finishing off with slamming him into the ground. "He won't be coming back after that," Naruto grunted, tying a cloth around his bleeding arm. Naruto was proved wrong by a tail rising from the dust-filled crater. Naruto and Lee readied themselves as Kimimaro struggled to his feet in his level 2 curse mark state. Kimimaro snarled as bone plates covered his skin, making him look like an armored dinosaur. Lee and Naruto rocketed towards Kimimaro, they launched a flurry of blows at the bone ninja. Naruto cursed as Kimimaro shrugged off all of his and Lee's blows and lashed out with his limbs and tail. Lee and Naruto were sent flying by Kimimaro, they both landed in a cloud of sand. Naruto growled and rushed at Kimimaro again, blades flaring. Naruto made to ram both chakra blade into his, but they only scratched Kimimaro's armor. Naruto flickered, avoiding Kimimaro's blows while searching for a weakness in Kimimaro's defense. There has to be some crack in his armor, Lee grunted. Naruto. Hinata's voice echoed over the battlefield. Naruto looked up and saw Hinata standing just outside the line of fire. His joints are the weak points. She called. Naruto flashed Hinata the thumbs up and attacked. He flickered, reappearing behind Kimimaro and slashed at the joints on Kimimaro's shoulders. Kimimaro cried in pain and lashed out at Naruto. Naruto vanished again, slashing at his elbows as he reappeared. Kimimaro extended spines over his body, trying to keep Naruto away, but he dodged between them and rammed his blade into the back of Kimimaro's knees. Kimimaro collapsed to the ground, glaring up at the trio. "Make it quick," Naruto muttered. Gaara surrounded Kimimaro with sand. Naruto saw the cold eyes one last time before he was completely engulfed in sand. Gaara closed his fist and crushed the sand. A single trickle of blood emerged from the sand, spilling onto the ground. Naruto turned away, making his way back to the camp but spun around as a roar echoed from Gaara's sand coffin. Kimimaro burst free from the sand and rushed at Naruto, shedding blood from his wounds in every direction. "I will not fail Lord Orochimaru again." Kimimaro roared, creating large bone blade on his arms. "You won't take a hint," Naruto growled as Kimimaro lunged at him. Naruto forced the little chakra he had left into his right hand and whipped it into a Rasengan as he dodged the crazed assault. Kimimaro launched himself at Naruto, razor-sharp bones ready to cut him down. Naruto braced himself and slammed the chakra sphere into the bone wielder. The sandstorm instantly swallowed up Kimimaro as Naruto jumped out of the path of destruction. Kimimaro stared in horror as his bone weaponry was ground down by the intense sandstorm. "Lord Orochimaru." The white-haired man bellowed over the rushing wind as he was worn away by the sand-laden wind. Hinata started sprinting before the dust cleared. Using her Byakugan, she found Naruto and he collapsed into her arms. Hinata almost fell from Naruto's weight, but she kept her balance and helped him towards the medical tent for a rest and a half-hearted scolding about exhausting all his chakra from Tsunade. Ieyashi stormed into the HQ tent, flinging the curtain door to one side. His brow was creased in rage and his mouth was a snarl. Jiraiya, perched on Tsunade's desk, looked over his shoulder at the newcomer as Tsunade looked around the Toad Sage. Naruto stood from his seat in front of Tsunade's desk, where Shizune had been bandaging his arm. Shizune forgot about the bandage and backed away from the infuriated Hyuga. Hiashi's eyes fixed on Naruto and ignored anyone else. "Where is she?" Hiashi demanded. "Where is who?" Naruto replied. "Don't play dumb with me, where is Hinata?" Hiashi's temples bulged as his Byakugan activated. He landed a blow on Naruto's shoulder and his arm went numb. "I'll ask once more then, it's your vital organs, where have you hidden my daughter Fox?" Naruto snapped and grabbed the front of Hiashi's kimono with his good arm. Hiashi gasped as he was lifted clear off the floor. "I don't give a damn if you're a noble or not, call me Fox once more and I'll still beat you 7 shades of blue. Hinata is hiding because you and the Council of Morons want to throw her out. Put him down, Naruto." Jiraiya ordered the blonde, "Don't give him more fuel for his fire." Naruto reluctantly lowered Hiashi and stepped away from him. Hiashi smoothed his kimono and composed himself. It is the tradition in the Hyuga family for a woman who marries out of the family to have her Byakugan sealed. But what about disowning her? Tsunade demanded, coming out from behind her desk. "When she chooses to marry someone against the council's and my decision." Naruto growled. Hiashi stepped backwards. Tsunade held up her arm to block Naruto as Jiraiya grabbed the back of Naruto's jacket. Naruto scowled at Tsunade. Tsunade lowered her arm and moved closer to Hiashi. "You do realize I could remove your heart and let you watch it stop beating," she said calmly and quietly. Naruto's scowl became a smirk. Hiashi blanched. Was she threatening him? Hiashi Hyuga, lord of the Hyuga house. Naruto has proven his worth time after time, and not just in this war, in all the time he was with the village. You and the Council of Morons can't get it through your skulls that he isn't the Nine Tails, but Naruto Uzumaki, son of Minato Namikaze. Hiashi's eyes went wide and his jaw almost dropped. "Are you saying that foe?" Hiashi caught himself as Tsunade glared and Naruto growled, "That boy is the son of the 4th Hokage." Tsunade nodded. "Show me proof." Hiashi demanded. Naruto broke Jiraiya's grip on his jacket and reached inside it. Hiashi thought Naruto would draw a weapon, but instead he brought out a folded piece of paper. He thrust it at Hiashi. "Read," Naruto ordered. Hiashi snatched the paper, unfolded and read it. His face turned chalk-white as he read. Hiashi glared at Naruto, threw the paper at him and stormed out of the tent. "What was that paper?" Tsunade asked. "My birth certificate," Naruto replied, picking the paper up and putting it back inside his jacket. 1-0 to Naruto, Jiraiya grinned, ruffling Naruto's hair, that should really put a wrench in their works. The Hyuga compound was in uproar. The news of Naruto's lineage and Hinata's disappearance had sent the council into a frenzy of meetings that all dissolved into arguments. That monster can't be related to the fourth. The oldest Hyuga yelled. Are you calling the Hokage a liar? Hiashi said she was named as the attending when the boy was born, a female council member countered. There is the possibility the certificate is forged. Watch your tongue, that talk could be considered treason. Well, there is that possibility, she is fond of the fox brat. Hiashi sat in silence letting the council argue. He was jerked back to reality as the eldest council member slammed his hands down on the table. If he is the son of the fourth, then he must prove it. The old man yelled. He has already mastered the fourth's jutsu, the Rasengan. And created 2 unique variants of it. That proves nothing. The Sannin Jiraiya also mastered the Rasengan. You can't deny the resemblance with the fourth. Coincidence, the old man said imperiously. You seem almost desperate to ignore or dismiss his lineage, the woman muttered. Enough. The council leader bellowed, if he is the son of the fourth, he must prove himself. Cricket chirps pierced the evening air as Sakura stirred the ashes of the drying fire in front of her, trying to keep it going. Sasuke appeared, carrying more fuel for the fire. He dropped it near the fire and sat next to Sakura. A groan made both ninja look up as Naruto flopped down next to Sasuke and Sakura with a tired expression. Something wrong? Sasuke asked, already knowing the answer. If one more person asks if I'm really the son of the fourth again, I swear I'll let the fox take control. What did you expect? Sakura noted, the most hated boy in the village is revealed to be the son of the one who defeated the 9 tails, is going to be a surprise. Why didn't I just beat Hiashi senseless? Naruto groaned. Where's Hinata by the way? Sasuke asked, changing the subject. I'm not saying. I wouldn't put it past Hiashi or the Hyuga council to spy on me. They really don't like you, Sakura muttered. Nope, Naruto said and yawned. Have either of you had a decent night's sleep recently? Sasuke asked. Sakura and Naruto both shook their heads. Most of the sound attacks come at dawn or dusk. They're ruining my beauty sleep, Sakura added. Once this is all over, I'm going back to Suna with Hinata and not getting out of bed for a month. Naruto flushed as he realized what he'd just said. Sasuke smirked as Sakura looked like she was about to punch him. I meant sleeping, Naruto tried to assure Sakura, but it was too late. Sakura's fist sent Naruto flying into a pile of rubble. Lord Orochimaru, a sound ninja reported, Kimimaro has been defeated. Orochimaru grabbed the ninja and hurled him through the trees. He hit the largest and slid to the ground. Even with my modifications the sound 5 were useless. He raved. They still caused heavy casualties, Lord Orochimaru, Kabuto said, trying to calm him down. Another sound ninja cautiously approached Orochimaru. The spy ducked into a low bow as Orochimaru looked at him. What? He demanded. Lord Orochimaru, the leaf is the Kyuubi brat, the spy stuttered. Spit it out. The snake snarled. The Kyuubi vessel is the son of the Yondaime. Orochimaru's scowl changed to a sneer. This opens a whole new method of war, he smirked, tongue flickering. It was barely dawn as Naruto stole away from the campsite and through the village. He looked around for the 3rd time to make sure he wasn't being followed. Leaving the houses and buildings, Naruto entered the trees behind the village, heading for the deepest part of the forest. Naruto was using all the stealth skills he knew to avoid anyone following him. He pushed through the last clump of bushes and emerged into the hidden clearing where he'd arranged to meet Hinata. There was a rustling from the other side of the clearing, and Hinata emerged from the leaves. Naruto wasted no time in closing the distance between himself and Hinata. This me? Naruto asked. Hinata nodded, leaning against Naruto. Naruto's ears pricked as he heard someone coming. He stood and assumed a fighting stance as whoever was approaching got closer. There was a loud bark, and a white wolf-sized dog erupted from the foliage. Naruto was pinned to the ground by Akamaru before he could react. Kiba appeared after Akamaru with Neji behind him. Your stealth skills have improved greatly, Naruto, Neji commented. I'm surprised you found me, Naruto muttered, then looked at Kiba. Would you please call off Akamaru, I can't breathe. Kiba nodded to Akamaru, and he let Naruto get up. Naruto brushed himself down as Akamaru wandered over to Hinata, who gave him an affectionate pet. Are we under attack or did you just come here to set Akamaru on me? Naruto asked, slightly miffed at having his time with Hinata interrupted. The Hyuga Council has decided that you must prove yourself as the heir of the 4th Hokage, Neji explained. I've got the birth certificate, what more do they want? Naruto muttered. You'll have to ask them yourself, Kiba told him as he started to lead the way back to the village. Naruto took Hinata's hand as the party left the forest and entered the houses. They passed other ninja as they closed on the Hyuga mansion. Naruto heard the familiar mutterings that always followed him and caught a snippet of their conversation. Way that boy could be the son of the. Naruto ignored them as the party reached the gates of the Hyuga compound. He felt Hinata was shaking and she tightened her grip on her hand as they turned to face the imposing doors. If they try anything, run and find Gaara, Temari or Kankuro, Naruto whispered in her ear. Hinata nodded and the large gates opened, revealing Hiashi and the Hyuga Council. Naruto glared at them and they returned the gaze. Naruto Uzumaki, the council chairman said you claim to be the son of the fourth Hokage and now you must prove you are his flesh and blood. How? Naruto asked, folding his arms, I take it the birth certificate isn't enough. Neji, come here, Hiashi ordered. Neji obeyed automatically, moving to Hiashi's side. There will be 3 challenges, each testing a quality of the fourth. Strength, agility and cunning, or lack of in your case. It has been agreed that Neji is the strongest of the Hyuga branch family. You and he will duel, if you can defeat him, then you will move on to the next challenge, Hiashi said flatly. What will beating Neji prove? The fourth Hokage was the strongest ninja this village has ever seen, if you are his flesh and blood, then you should have inherited his strength. Sorry about this, Naruto growled to Neji as he balled his fists. Ready? Neji asked as he readied himself. Naruto's ears pricked, he turned as the noise grew louder, and suddenly the ground shook. We'll do this later, Naruto muttered and flickered. The Leaf Ninja rushed at the enemy advancing on the Leaf Village and was cut down with little effort. Orochimaru swung his sword as another wave of ninja tried to attack, sending them flying. Fall back. Achunin yelled, backing away from the snake. A flicker of sand announced Naruto's arrival, he was followed by Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi. Ah, just the fox I wanted to see, Orochimaru's face broke into a wide smirk. Naruto launched a kunai at Orochimaru, but he knocked it away with a casual swipe of his sword before planting both his hands flat on the ground. Summoning jutsu, he hissed, reanimation. All Konoha eyes focused on the coffin and the kanji on the front of it. Fourth. The lid fell and a shadowy figure stepped out. Orochimaru wasted no time in pulling a futa from inside his robe and placing it inside the former corpse before he backed away as coffin rose fell to the ground. The Sound Army followed their leader as he left the battleground. The world was frozen as the fourth Hokage stood before Konoha. Sasuke's Sharingan flickered as Kakashi moved to lift his headband and Sakura took a fighting stance, but they froze when Naruto spoke. Stay back, he ordered, voice grim and lifeless, this is my fight. Both ninja were still as they locked eyes. Naruto glared into the lifeless eyes of the fourth, pulling another kunai from his pouch. It's not my father. Naruto kept repeating over and over in his head. They both started moving at the same time, sprinting towards each other with weapons raised. Just before they met, both ninja flickered and vanished. Sasuke dived out of the way as Naruto and the fourth materialized in front of him and each aimed blows at the other. Naruto caught the yondaime in the chest with his fist while he was hit in the side by a kick. They both vanished again. Naruto landed on a mound of rubble and was forced to flicker again as the fourth aimed a punch at him. The rubble where Naruto had been shattered under the blow from the former Hokage's fist. Naruto appeared behind his father's image and made to slam his foot into Minato's head, but as it connected the fourth vanished. Naruto was thrown forwards by Minato's feet impacting his back. Minato didn't let up his assault, he seemed to be everywhere and nowhere as he pummeled Naruto. Pox. Chakra. Naruto screamed inside his head and for once he felt the red chakra of the nine tails almost immediately. Naruto didn't want to think why the demon was being so helpful and kept fighting. The blonde sandstorm flickered and landed at distance from the fourth, without pausing Naruto formed his chakra blades and fired a chakra shockwave at Minato, but he dodged, coming at Naruto again. Naruto ducked low and hammered his fist and chakra blade into Minato's stomach. The former Hokage staggered away as the wound healed, but Naruto wasn't about to let up and slashed at the yondaime until he flickered out of reach. Both ninjas stood ready facing each other. The world seemed so still to Naruto after the assault he just survived. No choice, Naruto muttered as he formed a Rasengan in his right hand and charged. Minato created a spinning sphere of chakra and launched himself at his son. Lady Hokage. A female Anbu called as he rushed into her tent. What's going on? Tsunade demanded of the masked Kunoichi as another crash echoed around the village. Orochimaru has raised the fourth. Tsunade let fly a torrent curses as she headed towards the battlefield. All medical teams with me. She called to the crowd of medics, then turned back to the Anbu. How many casualties? So far none, she replied, Uzumaki is managing to keep the fourth at bay. Tsunade stumbled and almost fell, Naruto is. Yes ma'am and they've started to use the Rasengan against each other. This is getting very nasty very quickly, Tsunade muttered to herself, give orders to flee on side of the fourth and keep put of Naruto's way. I think he's the only one who can defeat Minato. Look out. Someone screamed. Tsunade instinctively ducked as Naruto landed next to her and vanished again without even seeming to see her. She couldn't help but gape as she looked over the battlefield that was Konoha. Even without shadow clones, Naruto seemed to be everywhere at once, scattering sand in every direction with each flicker. The name Sandstorm really suits him, Shizune murmured and choked on a mouthful of sand. As the two Rasengan spheres met there was an explosion of chakra, Minato and Naruto were flung apart. Naruto managed to right himself, but the fourth crashed into a rubble heap that had been a house. Minato rose to his feet again and created another Rasengan. Naruto launched himself out of the way but was caught in the debris thrown up by the spinning sphere. Minato erupted from the dust cloud as Naruto landed, but Naruto dodged again and fired a chakra shockwave at Minato's back. This is insane. Sakura screamed as more rubble went flying. They keep this up and Orochimaru won't have anything left to destroy. Naruto rushed at Minato, chakra blades at both hands. He ducked at the last second and slashed through the newest Rasengan in Minato's hand. The burst of chakra knocked both of them off their feet. I can't keep this up much longer. Naruto though, panting for breath. I have to end this. Naruto layered his Rasengan with wind element chakra and charged again. This time when the two spheres met, the ninja weren't thrown apart but a storm of chakra erupted around them. Fall back. Tsunade screamed as the chakra storm grew, shattering the ground and scattering rocks in all directions. Naruto gritted his teeth as he was forced backwards by Minato. In response, Naruto dumped more chakra into his Rasengan and pushed back. The surface of Minato's Rasengan rippled as it lost power and shattered. Naruto saw Minato reaching out with his other hand and readied for another attack, but was paralyzed when Minato's open palm ruffled Naruto's hair. Time seemed to freeze as Minato's hand touched Naruto. Naruto saw the warm smile of his father and saw his mouth moving but missed the words. Naruto reached out to return the touch, but Minato's smiling face crumbled into dust as his hand brushed him and he was swallowed up by the sandstorm. The dome of chakra ebbed and the sandstorm died. As the last rubble lifted by the chakra storm fell back to earth, Naruto vanished. Hinata pushed her way through the thick bushes and emerged into the secret clearing. She found Naruto where she'd expected to find him, sitting in the center of the clearing, hugging his knees. Everyone's worried about you, Hinata told Naruto as she sat next to him. Naruto didn't reply. Nobody got hurt because you protected them, Hinata said, tying a different tact. Naruto still didn't respond. His eyes seemed far away and glazed. Hinata let the silence reclaim the clearing as the sky became peppered with stars. That's the first time I've ever seen his face for real, Naruto finally said. Hinata wasn't surprised as the lack of energy in his voice as he spoke. She slid closer to Naruto, taking one of his hands in hers. An eerie quiet had descended across the remains of Konoha. The battle with the fourth had left a greater psychological wound than a physical one. The sight of the fourth Hokage fighting under Orochimaru's control had pushed morale through the floor. The only upside to the appearance of the fourth was Tsunade's decision to start planning aggressive counterattacks. But of all the Konoha and Suna forces, Naruto seemed to have been the worst affected by the battle. Hinata had eventually managed to coax Naruto into letting Tsunade look him over. The Konoha 12 were scattered around the medical tent as Tsunade examined Naruto, none of them found Naruto's dejected state comfortable. Eventually the fifth emerged from the tent and immediately was surrounded. Physically he's fine, Tsunade reported to the worried crowd, but fighting his father has left him mixed up emotionally. Keep an eye on him. Tsunade was dragged off by Shizune at the insistence of the council for planning the counterattacks, and the ninja disbanded, except for Sasuke. The Uchiha pushed the canvas flap out of the way and entered. He spotted Naruto sitting next to Hinata on one of the makeshift beds, apart from the other patients. He crossed to the pair and sat opposite them on an empty cot. "How you doing?" he asked, voice unusually soft. "Okay," Naruto shrugged. "Liar," Sasuke countered, "you feel like they're being pulled in every direction at once. You don't know what to do, be angry, sad or happy." Naruto dipped his gaze. Hinata tried to stop Sasuke's lecture, but he didn't let her. "When your emotions stabilize, you will most likely end up hating Orochimaru. Trust me, I've been through this after Itachi." Sasuke broke off, the memory's still painful. "Hate is a dangerous feeling, it blinds you to those around you and when finally look around you'll find yourself alone." Naruto looked up, seeing sincerity in his eyes. "Besides," Sasuke's voice became lighter, "I can't let you take down Orochimaru all by yourself. I want to crack at him too." Sasuke stood up to leave. "Just think about that," he said as he left. Tsunade studied the Konoha map laid out on the table in front of her. There were various colored markers scattered over the map, each marking an enemy or allied position. The tent was filled with a cloud cigarette smoke that wouldn't have looked out of place hovering over a poker game. Shikamaru flicked the stub of a cigarette to the floor and ground it out with his foot. "That's a filthy habit," Tsunade said unconsciously. "Something I picked up from Asuma-sensei," Shikamaru replied as he lit another. Tsunade moved 3 blue markers on the left side and 2 on the right, then shook her head. "Whatever we try leaves us open on at least 2 fronts," Tsunade muttered as they returned the pieces to their original positions. Shikamaru leaned over the map, going over every position for what seemed like the 100th time. Regardless of how he looked at the situation, there were just too few shinobi left. Tsunade finally lost her temper and kicked the table, causing the markers to jump and shift. She flopped into her chair as Shikamaru took a long draw from his cigarette. Shikamaru leaned against one of the tent supports trying to find a strategy he and Tsunade hadn't already gone over and rejected. He glanced at the map and positions again, without paying much attention. Then something clicked. He levered himself off the post and crossed to the table and started moving markers all over the map. Tsunade stood and watched his feverish movements and the rapt expression on his face. Shikamaru was so absorbed in his actions that he didn't notice his cigarette going out as it ran out of tobacco. Finally he stood back and wiped his forehead, a triumphant smirk on his face. "You know Shikamaru," Tsunade smiled, "I think that's the most effort I've ever seen you put into anything." Shikamaru also smiled, dropping his cigarette butt to the ground and grinding it out with a sense of finality. Shizune peeped around the tent flap and was taken aback by the cloud of smoke. "Do we have a plan?" she asked nervously and choked on the fumes. "We have a plan," Tsunade confided. Outside the tent, most of the Konoha 12 were clustered around a struggling fire near the entrance, hiding from the rain and awaiting instructions. "They've been in there for almost 3 hours," Ino noted as she tried to keep the fire going. "If anyone can get us out of this mess it's Shikamaru," Choji said as the fire hissed and shrank. "Naruto's meeting with the Hyuga Council," Kiba muttered, trying to keep the conversation going. "I wonder how the council is going to react to the battle with the fourth," Shino said as the fire gave up the ghost and died, leaving a pathetic whip of smoke. The rain continued its steady downpour until it seemed to run out of steam and died away, but the grey cloud still hovered overhead, threatening more rain. Naruto stood in front of the Hyuga Council and Hiashi in the courtyard of the Hyuga mansion. Hinata was to his left and Sakura to his right. "Uzumaki, are you ready to prove yourself?" Hiashi demanded as Neji moved into the center of the courtyard. Naruto didn't speak. "Answer me Uzumaki," Hiashi scowled. "Naruto is in no condition to fight," Sakura objected, "and the fight with the fourth should have settled this." "You have no reason to be present at this proof of blood," a council member told her, "be silent or be gone." Sakura fumed debating whether to retort but thought better of it. Neji assumed the gentle fist stance while Naruto remained motionless. "You are trying my patience, your non-compliance will result in silence." An elderly but stern voice echoed around the courtyard. All the eyes in the courtyard were instantly turned towards the source of the voice. An elderly woman leaning on a cane slowly emerged into the courtyard. Her long grey hair was tied back so it flowed down her back in a similar way to Hinata's. She was wearing a lilac kimono with a flower pattern along the hem. Her Byakugan eyes were almost all white, but Naruto still felt like she could see through him. The members of the council bowed as she stepped into the courtyard and shuffled towards them. "Who is she?" Naruto asked Hinata out of the side of his mouth as the old woman continued towards the crowd. "Grandma Himika," Hinata whispered, "she's the head of the main branch. But she leaves most of the Hyuga affairs to the council and my father." Naruto saw the similarities between Hinata and her grandmother as he looked at the old woman. He wondered if she would look much like Hinata if she were younger. Himika walked past the council and stopped in front of Naruto, leaning on her stick. She was a head shorter than Naruto, but her stern gaze made him nervous. "Young man, am I to believe that you are Naruto Uzumaki?" Naruto nodded. "Son of the Yondaime? And the one who saved my granddaughter from an enemy ninja in the forest?" Naruto nodded again. "Show me the document," Himika ordered firmly. Naruto pulled the scroll containing his birth certificate from his pocket and handed it to the old woman. Himika studied the scroll and certificate briefly, then handed it back to Naruto. She looked Naruto up and down twice, then walked around him, studying him from every angle. "I can see why Hinata has fallen for you, a handsome young man like yourself." "But mother," Hiashi tried to protest. "Don't interrupt Hiashi. You're not too old to be told to stand in the corner and think about what you've done. We of the Hyuga clan are gifted with the ability to see that which is hidden to others, but you still choose to judge others on face value." Himika glared over her shoulder at her son. "You and the council are all too proud," she declared, "you all judge this boy as if he were the fox and not a person. I was part of the Konoha council before any of you were born and I witnessed the battle with the Kyuubi. This boy is nothing like the demon that attacked our village. I served under the Yondaime and I can see him now in this boy before me." Naruto faltered as Himika spoke. Did he really look like his father? The council member muttered something about the old bat being senile. Himika whipped around, glaring at the council crowd that shrank away. "Just because I'm twice the age of any of you don't think I can't take you," Himika growled. But a council member tried to argue. "I have spoken," Himika's voice made even Naruto cower. "As the head of the Hyuga family, I declare the matter resolved and closed to further discussion." Himika turned to Hinata and her face softened. "Hinata, I approve of your relationship with this man and Naruto, I give you permission to court my granddaughter." Naruto felt like hugging the old woman before him, but Hinata got there first. She hugged her grandmother so tight she was in danger of passing out. Hinata eventually released her and Himika smoothed her kimono. "Now Naruto," Himika said as she took Naruto's arm, "come with me and Hinata, we'll have tea in the veranda and you can tell me about yourself." Himika looked over her shoulder to Hiashi again. "Hiashi, be a good son and bring some of my favorite herbal tea to the veranda." "Yes mother," Hiashi sighed, realizing he wasn't about to win against his mother. Himika guided Naruto and Hinata through the mansion to a little garden with a low porch overlooking it. There was a table in the middle of the veranda and a scattering of cushions across around it. Himika lowered herself onto a large cushion slowly as Naruto and Hinata sat opposite her. Naruto was careful to remember his manners as Himika started getting to know her granddaughter's boyfriend. "Naruto, though my eyes may not be as sharp as they once were, I witnessed the fight with your father. Do you know what he said to you?" Naruto shook his head sadly. "I couldn't hear," he mumbled, staring out into the garden. "Well, I do," Himika said. Naruto's head whipped up. "How?" Naruto choked. "Using my Byakugan, I read his lips." Himika smiled warmly. "He said, 'I'm proud of you, son.'" The conversation stopped as Hiashi appeared carrying a tray with the tea. He looked like he wanted to give Naruto a dirty look but thought better of it as Himika gave him a warning look. Naruto didn't notice as he was trying to compose himself. The conversation started again after the tea was served. "Just so you know, Naruto," Himika said as she sipped her tea, "I expect a lot of great-grandchildren from you and Hinata." Naruto choked on his tea and spluttered as Hinata went crimson. "Grandma," Hinata squeaked. Gaara finished helping the patch up of the village wall. He turned as something in the forest caught his attention. Sand swirled as Gaara readied himself. A low hiss floated from the leaves causing Gaara to tense. The Redeed leaped out of the way as a massive snake burst out of the trees. The snake slammed into the wall and hissed angrily at missing its target. Gaara grabbed the snake's head with his sand and threw it away from the wall. The monster recoiled and lunged at Gaara again, fangs bared. Gaara's sand caught both the open jaws of the giant reptile, halting its strike, but its tail whipped out and struck the wall, knocking Gaara off balance. The snake shook off the sand and hissed, tongue flickering. A sand scatter announced Naruto's appearance, followed by Sasuke. The Uchiha glanced at the snake and recognized it. "Naruto, Gaara, this snake belongs to Orochimaru," Sasuke said, "not the most powerful snake of his, but it is the most poisonous." The snake spat at Sasuke, who sidestepped, the jet of liquid hitting the wall and starting to burn a hole in the stone. Naruto's chakra blades materialized and Sasuke's eyes went red as the snake opened its hood and reared up as high as it could. They all dodged the second stream of venom, and Gaara hurled a volley of sand shuriken at the snake. Sasuke added Gaara's attack by firing several fireballs. The reptile shrugged off the attacks as Naruto appeared on its head. She-Snake felt Naruto appear and tried to throw him off. Even with chakra anchoring him to the snake's head, Naruto lost his footing and was thrown off, but he managed to slash through its right eye as he was tossed. The reptile had howled and hissed in pain, spitting poison in every direction. Gaara ducked behind the wall as Naruto and Sasuke dived into the trees. Naruto looked at Sasuke and he nodded. They both dashed out from the trees, Sasuke spitting fire and Naruto throwing kunai. Sasuke darted right and kicked off the nearest tree as Naruto slashed at the snake with his chakra blades. Sasuke emerged from the trees again, kicked off the village wall and landed on the tail of the snake. Lightning sparked in Sasuke's hand before he rushed along the reptile, Chidori cutting a deep gash through the snake's scales and flesh. He launched himself clear of the snake as it thrashed in agony. The snake's tongue flickered as it found Sasuke's scent and charged him. The snake seemed intent on revenge as it thundered after Sasuke, bashing trees out of its path. Naruto flickered into the path of the snake, chakra blades ready. The snake didn't slow down as it launched its attack on Naruto. The blonde focused his wind chakra into his blades and stretched them as far as he could before unleashing a massive shockwave. The air blade hit the snake and tore through it as if it wasn't there, cutting it clean in two. The snake's momentum kept it going, and the two half landed on either side of Naruto with an earth-shaking crash. Naruto sank to his knees as Gaara and Sasuke joined him. Gaara glanced at the snake's already disintegrating body. "Must be its own poison," he noted. "Too much chakra?" Sasuke asked Naruto, who nodded. The Uchiha shook his head. "You have really got to stop doing that," he muttered. "Frantic attack with little plan," Gaara muttered as helped Naruto to stand, signs of desperation. The clouds held good on their threat and eventually opened again, dousing the village with water. The rain pattered down across the broken buildings and scattered tents of Konoha. Naruto was perched on the remains of a building, looking up at the face of his father carved into the mountain. The water running down the stone faces of the Hokages had gathered into streams that looked like tears. "The pain of the village is their pain," a voice said as an umbrella approached Naruto's perch and also looked up at the stone faces. Naruto looked down and recognized the voice and kimono as Himika's. Hinata's sandals were just visible under the umbrella. "Whenever the village is hurting, the rain shows their feelings," the elderly Hyuga continued. Silence fell, except for the rain, as the pair looked up at the Hokages. "Himika, what was my father like?" Naruto asked suddenly. Himika looked up at the soaked blonde then back to Minato's stone portrait. "Minato was a strong man," she said after a long pause, "wise beyond his years but kind and cheerful. Very little seemed to faze him and he was seldom angry. I remember he would often join me in my veranda when he sought my advice. I was very taken with him for a time, but he was younger than me and he only had eyes for one woman. What did he need advice about?" "Your mother," Himika smiled. "The legendary fourth Hokage had no idea how to deal with your mother. What was your mother like?" Himika finished. She was best described as a tomboy, but she would always remember her manners. She wouldn't take no for an answer. Himika paused. Actually, she was very like you, except for the manners. Hinata quashed a giggle as Naruto looked indignant. My manners aren't that bad, Naruto said as hopped off his seat and landed next to Himika and Hinata. You'll catch a death of cold sitting there in the rain, Himika semi-scolded. Naruto took Hinata's hand and the trio headed back towards the Hyuga mansion. Most of the remaining Konoha forces were resting while a few were on guard duty. But away from the campsite that had been a village, a raven-haired and blonde shinobi were sitting silently on twin piles of rubble. Naruto and Sasuke had their eyes closed and legs crossed, both looked as if they were deep in thought, but they were meditating. Sasuke opened one eye and looked across at Naruto. I still don't know how you do this, he muttered, especially with a mind as chaotic as yours. It just takes practice, Naruto said, barely moving, but it gives you a chance to clear your mind. What are you two doing? Gaara asked as he appeared from behind the pair. I'm trying to teach Sasuke how to meditate, Naruto replied. As if it wasn't bad enough when you decide to wall yourself off from the real world, Gaara moaned, but Sakura is looking for both of you. Something about missing 3 meals in a row. I don't consider the rations we're getting a meal, Sasuke complained, eyes still closed. You know what Sakura's like when she's angry, Naruto said as he stood, we'd better get going. Naruto led the way back to the campsite, through the forest and ruins of Konoha. The blonde paled as the campsite and Sakura's angry face came into view. Naruto debated whether it was worth hiding behind Gaara, but Hinata came to his rescue before Sakura could start lecturing him. Hinata grabbed Naruto's hand and dragged him towards the mess tent. After Naruto had collected his food, she made him sit next to her at the fire. Hinata looked at Naruto intently, making sure he ate. Meanwhile Sakura had turned her attention and anger towards Sasuke. The light conversation around the fire soon petered out as other ninja retired to their beds. Soon Hinata's eyes drooped and he slumped sideways, resting her head on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto put his now empty tray aside and put his arm around Hinata's shoulder. As the fire started to die, Naruto decided he would also go to bed. He gathered Hinata into his arms. It'll all end soon. Neither side has much strength left. Naruto thought as he strode off towards the Hyuga compound, Hinata still asleep in his arms. Sasuke gave up on sleep and slipped out of his tent. He ignored the threat of rain the clouds carried and strode off through the ruins. The dark-haired shinobi wandered without thinking, lost in his own memories. He looked around as an owl broke the night silence. The entrance to the Uchiha district was before him. Sasuke gritted his teeth and stepped into the Uchiha streets. It felt strange to Sasuke seeing the streets he'd grown up on now in ruins. A flicker of movement caught Sasuke's eye and he turned to look, but the street was empty. He continued through the district, remembering a time long before the incident with Itachi. The long-abandoned main house appeared before Sasuke and he crossed its courtyard without thinking. He paused at the front door before going inside. The plaster of the walls was crumbling after being neglected for such a long time. Sasuke cursed as his foot went through a rotting floorboard. He hauled his foot free and continued through the house. He looked into a room as he passed and saw his old bedroom. Sasuke's attention was ripped from his room by a flicker of movement as it vanished around a corner. He gave chase, rushing after the shadow. Every time he rounded a corner, the shadow vanished around another. After a few minutes of chasing the flicker, Sasuke's Sharingan flared in anger. Even with his bloodline trait, he still couldn't tell what the shadow was. Sasuke skidded around another corner and saw the main hall before him. He cautiously entered, treading carefully over the crumbling boards. Even in the poor light, Sasuke could see the shadow had vanished. Sasuke whipped around as a hated voice met his ears. You lack hatred. There was no one in the room. Even with his Sharingan, Sasuke couldn't find anyone or anything. Sasuke shook himself. He left the room and the house, heading back towards the campsite, but he still wasn't convinced he'd been alone in the house. Naruto gently placed Hinata on her bed and turned to leave. He stopped as he felt a tug on his jacket. Hinata was sound asleep, but she was tightly holding onto his jacket. Naruto tried to prise Hinata's fingers open, but she wasn't about to let go. He sighed, shedding his jacket and sitting on the bed next to Hinata. Hinata opened her eyes slightly as Naruto lay down next to her. Mind if I stay here? Naruto grinned. Hinata shook her head and wrapped her arms around Naruto's chest before going back to sleep. Naruto freed his jacket and tossed it to the floor as he closed his eyes and was soon asleep. Sasuke looked over the old building bathed in moonlight that was the Uchiha mansion. Regardless of what he was doing, Sasuke's mind always seemed to drift back to the shadow in the mansion. He marched towards the house, the Sharingan appearing in his eyes. Sasuke ignored the creaking floorboards as he checked the house thoroughly. Every section of the house was empty and quiet, it seemed almost too quiet. Sasuke's search eventually led him back to the main hall, but this time there was someone waiting for Sasuke. The black cloak with the red clouds was unmistakable. Itachi, Sasuke growled. Sasuke, Itachi replied without emotion. "What are the Akatsuki doing here?" Sasuke demanded. "The Akatsuki have nothing to do with my presence here. I'm here of my own will." Sasuke lost his cool, lightning sparked as he charged at Itachi. Itachi grabbed Sasuke's wrist and pushed him away, so his Chidori crashed into the wall. Sasuke turned to face Itachi as he pulled his hand free from the wall. He lunged at Itachi, throwing punches at his older brother. Itachi blocked every fist, then knocked Sasuke's feet out from under him. The floorboards cracked under Sasuke's back as he hit them. Sasuke scrambled back to his feet in time to have Itachi slam his fist into his chest. Sasuke was sent flying backwards, through a wall. A cloud of dust and plaster filled the air as most of the wall Sasuke had hit collapsed. Itachi was scalded by the barrage fireballs that erupted from the cloud. Sasuke used Itachi's surprise to lunge at Itachi and slam his foot into Itachi's stomach. Itachi recovered and knocked Sasuke away from him. The two brothers circled each other, not taking their eyes off the other. Sasuke caught a lump of plaster with his foot and hurled it at Itachi. Itachi tried to swat the plaster out of the air, but it shattered, creating a cloud of dust. Sasuke materialized behind Itachi and planted both his feet in Itachi's back, knocking him off balance. Sasuke knocked Itachi into a wall, then grabbed the back of his cloak and threw him across the room. Itachi pushed himself off the wall, stemming the flow of blood from his nose as Sasuke appeared next to him and kicked him again. Sasuke didn't let up, determined not to let Itachi have room to breathe, let alone fight back. Itachi faced Sasuke, face showing only a trace of annoyance. Sasuke ran at his brother again, but stumbled as his foot went through the rotten floor, he ended up knee-deep in the boards. Sasuke realized there was empty space underneath his foot and that something must be hidden under the room. He tried to pull free of the wood, but the floor beneath him creaked and felt like it would collapse, forcing him to freeze. Itachi watched Sasuke struggle as he walked towards the door. He stopped and turned back to look at Sasuke. Sasuke glared at Itachi, who responded by slamming his hand into one of the door supports. The ceiling groaned and parts fell as the last support broke. Itachi took a step back out into the corridor as the ceiling dropped more debris and sagged. "Itachi!" Sasuke yelled as the ceiling gave out and collapsed. Sasuke reacted in instinct, using his chakra to shatter the remaining boards holding him up and fell into the dark space beneath. Itachi walked at a leisurely pace down the corridor as the house collapsed behind him. He stepped out of the front door as the last beams and walls crumbled. Itachi heard the approaching Anbu and vanished. Naruto sat bolt upright in bed as an ear-splitting crash echoed through him. He jumped out of bed and dashed to the window. He saw the cloud of dust rising over the rooftops. He dashed back into the room and dressed quickly. Hinata sat up, rubbing her eyes as Naruto grabbed his jacket. "Naruto?" Hinata asked sleepily. "Be back as soon as I can," Naruto replied as he kissed her cheek. Naruto bounded back to the window, opened it and vanished. He leaped across the roofs as fast as he could, seeing other ninja also heading towards the dust cloud. The Fox vessel was one of the first to land in the Uchiha courtyard and see the destruction up close. A few ninja were swarming around the former building, trying to find out what happened. Naruto's ears pricked and he dodged as a sword slammed into the ground exactly where he'd been. "Missed." Kisame cursed as Naruto turned towards the bipedal shark. "If you're here, then Itachi must be somewhere nearby," Naruto growled. "You're smarter than the last time I met you," Kisame noted. "Yes, Itachi is here. But he has business with his little brother. I'm here to stop you interfering." Naruto created his chakra blades, moving to attack. "Maybe you're not smarter," Kisame said as he brandished Samehada. The blonde smirked and flickered, reappearing behind Kisame and kicking him in the head. Kisame whipped around, but Naruto was already gone. He reappeared and caught Kisame under the chin with his fist. Naruto ricocheted around Kisame, forcing him backwards. The shark leaped away, landing on a roof out of Naruto's reach. Naruto launched himself after the Akatsuki member and slammed his foot into Samehada. The groan echoed through the darkness as Sasuke's senses returned. He forced his eyes open, but all around him was darkness. After feeling for broken bones and finding none, Sasuke struggled to his feet. His eyes had adjusted to the lack of light and he was able to make out the dim outline of a flight of stairs behind him and a pile of rubble blocking them. So there is something down here. He thought as turned his back to the blocked exit. Sasuke's foot found something and he looked down. An old oil lantern. Sasuke picked it up and was surprised to find it near full of oil. He held the lamp in one hand and blew fire. The fire flickered and flared up, lighting the tunnel in an eerie light. Sasuke held the lamp up as he headed into the dark passage. Sasuke paused as he saw an Uchiha fan carved into the rock wall. "So my family did make this." He moved further down the tunnel, passing more fan carvings. Sasuke looked to his right, into a long alcove in the tunnel wall, and almost had a heart attack. The blank eyes of a bleached white skull stared back at him. As Sasuke calmed, he saw there was a whole skeleton laid out in the alcove. He looked behind him and saw another alcove with skeleton. "This is a crypt," he realized. Sasuke was reluctant to go further, but he moved on. He passed more alcoves as he went even deeper underground, some with skeletons, others vacant. The tunnel eventually opened out into a chamber, its walls lined with painted plaster. As Sasuke studied each wall he saw a story emerging. The emergence of the Sharingan bloodline, the Mangekyo Sharingan and Madara Uchiha's fight with the first Hokage among them. Sasuke looked at the carving at the end of the chamber, and his eyes widened. It showed a demon bowed down before a human with an Uchiha fan on the back of his robes, and the demon was unmistakably the Nine Tails. The second half of the painting showed the Berserk Nine Tails, poised to strike Konoha. So all you really wanted was to take over the village. Sasuke lost his temper and hurled the lamp at the painting. The lamp shattered, spilling burning oil over the wall. He turned his back on the chamber and sprinted back up the tunnel. He must have taken a wrong turn as he found the stairs too quickly and they weren't blocked with rubble. Sasuke burst through the covering at the top of the stairs and saw he was in a different part of the Uchiha district. The sound of battle met his ears and he launched himself up to the nearest roof. Sasuke took in the scene before him in a glance, then turned as he felt someone behind him. Itachi was standing on an opposite roof. A flurry of crows took flight from a cluster of trees as Sasuke glared at Itachi, Sharingan blazing. The first rays of sunlight appeared over the horizon as the two Sharingan users prepared to continue their battle. "So now you know the truth?" Itachi asked. The Uchiha clan was planning a coup d'etat using the fox demon as a distraction. I was under orders from the council to prevent the uprising. But I spared you. Let's end this. Sasuke growled. Once and for all, Itachi finished. Both brothers' eyes glowed red. Both brothers' eyes shifted pattern. Tsukuyomi. They both chorused. The world's colors inverted as the Jinjutsu took effect. Sasuke watched Itachi multiply and copied him. Both armies of copies advanced and attacked. Sasuke weaved through the crowd until he found the real Itachi and formed a sword in his hand. He slammed the blade through Itachi's chest, only to have Itachi melt away. Sasuke cried out as kunai buried themselves in the backs of his legs and he whipped around. Sasuke's blade caught Itachi in the throat as he turned. A katana appeared in Itachi's hand and he swung at Sasuke. The blade cut into his cheek, but Sasuke countered with a high kick to Itachi's face. Itachi stumbled backwards as Sasuke lunged with his katana raised. The swords pierced both brothers' chests at the same second and the illusion was broken. The world returned to its original colors as Tsukuyomi faded, leaving Sasuke and Itachi panting for breath. Blood trickled from Itachi's eye as he glared at Sasuke again. The Mangekyo Sharingan flashed in Itachi's eye and black flames surged. Sasuke countered with a similar surge of flame. Disum swung Samehada at Naruto, who used the blade as a springboard to launch himself high into the air. Naruto spotted Itachi and Sasuke as he hovered in the air for a second. He landed away from Kisame and looked on at the fight. Kisame also looked and was transfixed with what he saw. Wave after wave of black flames surged, each trying to swamp the last and growing steadily bigger. Eventually the flames died down, leaving patches of black still burning. Lightning sparked in Sasuke's hand as he readied himself. He took off across the roof at an inhuman speed, charging at Itachi. Itachi caught Sasuke's wrist at the last second, but Sasuke smirked. Itachi didn't have time to react to the second Chidori in Sasuke's other hand. Blood spattered across the tiles as Chidori made contact, tearing into Itachi. There was an eternity of silence before Sasuke withdrew his fist from Itachi's shoulder. Itachi sank to his knees as blood soaked into his cloak. He froze as Sasuke's kunai pressed into his neck. "Get out of here," Sasuke said, looking away from Itachi and withdrawing the kunai. "I see no purpose in seeking revenge for those who deserve their fate." Itachi struggled to stand, beckoning Kisame. His Akatsuki partner helped keep him on his feet as they vanished over the roofs into the dawn. Naruto scattered sand as he appeared next to Sasuke. "Why didn't you kill him?" he asked. The Uchiha clan was planning to take over the village using the fox as a distraction, Sasuke replied, eyes watching the point where the Akatsuki members had been. Itachi was under orders from the Hokage to prevent uprising. They deserved to rot unavenged. Naruto's eyes had gone wide in surprise and his mouth was hanging open, but he recomposed himself. "But next time," Sasuke continued, "the Akatsuki will fall." "I'm behind you with that," Naruto said as the birds in the forest started the dawn chorus. "Meeting in broad daylight is asking for trouble. It's the last thing they'd expect. And they're too focused on Orochimaru to bother with us right now." The voices coming from the burned-out building were hushed and urgent. Narrowed eyes kept a lookout for trouble, looking in all directions at once. "Amika has overruled our objections to the fox, so what can be done? Pardon the intrusion," a new voice addressed the gathering, causing weapons to be drawn. Danzo stepped from the shadows and looked over the secret council of Hyugas. "State your business," one growled. "I believe our goals are the same," Danzo told the other members. "I suggest working together to achieve a common objective. That fox is becoming a bigger thorn in our collective sides than any of us could have thought possible. It shouldn't be in the village. It shouldn't even be alive." What is your proposal? A female Hyuga demanded. A simple solution, eliminate the demon. But he is far stronger than any of us. There's more than one way to skin a fox, that is why we use this, Danzo interrupted, holding up a glass vial of almost invisible senbon. Each of these will be coated with a deadly poison. If we use them during an enemy attack, then no one will be any the wiser. And what poison will be used? Someone asked. I'll leave that to you, Danzo said as he handed the vial to the leading Hyuga, and in exchange for helping to keep that fox from our bloodline, what do you want in return? As you all know, the Konoha Council is made up of the Hokage, the elders and representatives from each of the 5 noble families of Konoha. Having 2 of the families under my influence was enough to exile the fox in the first place. But I need the support of 3 of the 5 noble families to hold a majority with the Konoha Council and to expel that fool of a Hokage. With her removed from power, I can take over and change Konoha into the military force it was always supposed to be. But Himika still holds power over the Hyuga clan, someone voiced. The old woman is not long for this world. She said it herself, she's almost twice your age. And there is always the possibility of an enemy shinobi eliminating her, or so it would appear to the other shinobi of the village. But after her passing, a new leader must be selected, perhaps someone easily bent to our will. Danzo let the meaning of his little speech sink in before continuing. Should you assist me in my endeavor to remove the 2 obstacles in the path, then I shall reward you most generously when I rule the land of fire. The oldest Hyuga stepped forward, looking up into Danzo's one uncovered eye. He held out his hand hesitantly. Danzo took the offered hand, and a sinister grin crossed his face. Our alliance will blossom into something beautiful, Danzo grinned evilly. My rude Anbu are ready to enact our plan whenever you wish. During the next attack from Orochimaru, the elderly man said, have your minions remove the fox. Are you sure this is wise? Another Hyuga woman asked. To keep that fox from the Hyuga clan, I'd make a deal with the devil, the old Hyuga stated. You just did. The woman thought as she looked at Danzo's sinister expression again. Several sound ninja launched themselves through the trees, 2-leaf shinobi hot on their tail. Sasuke hurled a kunai at the fleeing squad, catching the trailing ninja in the ankle. He stumbled and crashed to the forest floor. The squad seemed to decide as one that their only choice was to fight. They all dropped through the branches to the forest floor, producing weapons as they landed. Naruto charged into the sound ninja squad, a Rasengan in his right hand. The ninjas scattered as Sasuke appeared and launched fireballs at them. Naruto caught the nearest ninja and slammed him into the ground with the Rasengan sphere. Neither shinobi saw the shadowy figure hidden in the canopy above them. The shadow aimed carefully at Naruto as he landed a kick on an enemy. The hidden figure flicked his hand, throwing a sliver thread at the blonde ninja. Naruto didn't even feel the senbon pierce the skin on the back of his neck as he slammed 2 enemy ninjas' heads together. Sasuke turned to Naruto as he dropped the now unconscious ninja he was holding to the ground. 1 enemy squad eliminated, the Uchiha smirked. Now let's get back before my ramen gets cold. You and your ramen, Sasuke groaned as he and Naruto took off back towards the village. Naruto was first to launch himself over the village walls and land in the Konoha camp, Sasuke close behind him. As Sasuke was debriefing the Anbu on duty, Hinata appeared and approached Naruto. Naruto's hand locked with Hinata's as they kissed. A trickle of blood slipped from Naruto's nose as he and Hinata made their way towards the mess tent. Hinata looked at Naruto and paled. Naruto, you're bleeding, Hinata said as she pulled a handkerchief from her pocket. Naruto touched his face and found blood on his fingers. Hinata dabbed at Naruto's nose trying to stem the flow of blood. A puzzled look crossed Hinata's face as she saw Naruto was wobbling on his feet. Are you alright? Hinata asked. I feel kind of. Naruto couldn't finish as his eyes glazed and he fainted. Hinata managed to catch Naruto before he hit the ground. Sakura materialized next to Hinata, checking Naruto as Sasuke helped Hinata keep Naruto upright. Let's take him to Tsunade, Sakura said with a worried tone. Tsunade finished examining Naruto and left him and Hinata in the medical tent. She beckoned the worried observers into the Hokage tent. With a squeeze, the concerned party all managed to fit into the tent. It's bloody tear poisoning, Tsunade said with a deathly air. Kakashi and Iruka both went almost chalk white. What is bloody tear poisoning? Kiba asked. Practically a death sentence, Shizune whispered. The bloody tear is a rare plant that's roots contain a lethal toxin, Tsunade told the gathered shinobi. Once distilled, an almost invisible senbon is coated in the poison then used on the enemy. The senbon is usually small enough to be unfelt when it's used on the target. I found this in the back of his neck. Tsunade held up a narrow senbon in a glass tube. So how do we cure it? Sasuke asked. The flower of the same plant contains a similar compound that will neutralize the poison and act as an antidote if we can get it to in time, Ino said. How do you know that? Sakura demanded. I know medicine and my family owns a flower shop, the blonde replied. Naruto's currently in stage 1, fever followed by delirium and hemorrhaging, Tsunade stated, shifting into Dr. Minset. We've managed to stop his bleeding, but he'll soon be moving into stage 2. What is stage 2? Sasuke asked hesitantly. Failure of the circulatory system and chakra pathways followed by coma. What are we going to do? We can't let Naruto die. Sakura almost screamed. There was a ringing silence through the tent for an eternal minute before Tsunade spoke. Shizune, Kiba, Akamaru, Shino and Niji. You six are to head out and find at least one bloody tear flower. Where are we supposed to look? Niji asked. The bloody tear only grows in sandy soil that has seen bloodshed, where there is enough water to keep the roots permanently submerged, and where there is plenty of sunlight and warmth, Shizune told him. Needle in a haystack anyone, Kiba groaned. The whole tent shot Kiba evil glares except for Shikamaru. He unrolled a map across Tsunade's desk and pulled up a marker pen into view. 7 locations in the surrounding forest that match the criteria, Shikamaru said as he circled 7 points on the map. Of the 7, 2 of them are in enemy territory, he scribbled over 2 of the circles. And the other 2 are bone dry. Shikamaru scribbled no the map again. Time is very much of the essence right now, so get going. Tsunade screamed. Niji grabbed the map and rolled it back up again before he and the others shot off at top speed. Hinata sat on the edge of the bed that held the unconscious Naruto. She held his hand as she was trying not to cry. Sasuke was sitting on an empty bed across the room with an evil expression. Sakura was bussing herself with other patients, but her eyes kept wandering to Naruto's bed. Sasuke stood and left the medical tent, deep in though. The bloody tear is only found in the forest around Konoha, so whoever poisoned him must be from Konoha. It's a rare plant, and the Hyuga knows the most about it. Orochimaru is former Konoha, but he's fixated on jutsu rather than plants. Kabuto knows medicine, but he doesn't use poisons. That only leaves someone from the village. Anbu members are usually charged with assassinations, and poison is usually the choice of assassins. But who would want to? The answer suddenly dawned on Sasuke. Root Anbu and the Hyuga Council. The Uchiha turned around and bolted for the Hokage's tent. Tsunade looked up as Sasuke burst into the tent. Root Anbu poisoned Naruto, Sasuke said. What makes you think they did it? The bloody tear is only found in the Konoha forest, so only someone from Konoha, specifically the Hyuga, would know about it. Anbu Black Ops are usually charged with assassinations and who wants Naruto out of the way? The Hyuga Council and Root Anbu. Tsunade went pale then red in anger. She stood up slowly, seemingly in control. As soon as Naruto is cured, Tsunade said calmly, I am going to kill them. Shizune looked over the map as Kiba and Akamaru were rooting around in the undergrowth. Shino recalled his insects as Niji scanned the area with his Byakugan. Kiba's head popped out of the bushes and looked towards Shizune. What does the flower smell like? Shizune was flummoxed for a second, honey mixed with vinegar. Kiba stepped out of the bushes, scenting the air. Nothing, he muttered. Shizune scowled as she scribbled on the map, onto the last location. The team gathered then took off into the trees. They all rushed through the forest, moving as fast as possible. In no time they had reached the clearing and landed. There's a lot of sand around here, Kiba muttered as his foot sank up to his ankle in the soft ground. Niji looked around the whole area with his Byakugan, noting the landmarks. This is where Gaara fought Kimimaro, he said. That explains the sandy soil and the bloodshed, Kiba noted. Looks like something good finally came out of the Sound 5 incident, Niji replied. Shino sent his bugs out through the forest as Kiba started searching the bushes again. Niji's Byakugan found a stream and he followed it, but cursed as it vanished underground. There was a cry and Kiba vanished with a splash. The team immediately looked over to where Kiba had been standing and saw a skid mark in the soft ground leading down a slope towards the edge of the forest. Niji followed the slope and found Kiba on his back in a pool of water. What happened? Kiba asked, sitting up. You hit the jackpot, Niji replied, pointing over his shoulder. Kiba looked around. There was a cluster leaves on the bank of the pool, with 5 long stems sprouting from the center. Each of the stems sported a long crimson flower that drooped over the edge of the water. Lucky I missed them, Kiba smirked. Tsunade left the medical tent after checking Naruto for the 10th time. She looked around as Shino, Kiba, Shizune, Akamaru and Niji entered the village at a run. Someone order a cure? Kiba asked, holding a pouch with a crimson flower sticking out of the top. Tsunade grabbed the pouch and dived into the medical tent again, Shizune following her. Tsunade stripped the petals off the flower and dropped them into a waiting bowl. She proceeded to grind them into a paste, then watered it down. She handed the bowl to Sakura. Make sure he drinks all of this, Tsunade instructed, beckoning to Sasuke. I believe there is a matter we must attend to. Tsunade strode off the tent with Sasuke hot on her heels. They marched through the camp until they reached the Anbu tent. Tsunade disappeared inside the tent and quickly reappeared, dragging Danzo behind her. The old man seemed too stunned to object as Tsunade dragged him towards the Hyuga compound. Himika looked up from her tea as Tsunade walked through the Hyuga compound's main doors. Is Naruto alright? She asked. He'll be alright, but it's the cause of his illness is what we've come to talk about. Himika raised an eyebrow. It was bloody tear poisoning. Himika's other eyebrow joined the first. Sasuke and I believe that the Root Anbu has collaborated with certain members of the Hyuga Council behind your back. Lies, Danzo objected only to be silenced by a kick in the ribs from Sasuke. A flush appeared on Himika's face as her anger boiled up. Hiashi, she bellowed, making Sasuke and Tsunade jump. Yes mother, Hiashi replied as he appeared. Assemble the council, Himika told him. Less than 5 minutes later the council was assembled. Himika lined up the council in the courtyard, giving each of them evil glares. Hold out your hands, Himika ordered. The council members reluctantly held out their hands. Tsunade dropped Danzo and moved up and down the line until she found a member with red patches on their hands. She grabbed him and hauled him out of the lineup. It took less than 5 minutes of threatening for his co-conspirators to be identified and dragged out of the lineup. I want each of these traitors' bloodlines bound then thrown out of the village. Himika ordered. Hyuga shinobi appeared and dragged the council members out of the courtyard, each of them protesting loudly, but their objections were soon silenced. Now if you will excuse me I need to take care of those idiots. Tsunade nodded and smirked as she looked at Danzo. Now to take care of you, she grinned evilly. Danzo tried to back away but bumped into Sasuke's legs. He looked up into crimson eyes and whimpered. For the next 72 your ass is mine. Muffled sounds were the first to breach the darkness surrounding the blonde fox vessel. To Naruto, it sounded like he had his head underwater while everyone else was on the shore. Next came the unwelcome sense of pain throughout his body, fire through his veins and ice covering his skin. It felt like an eternity before the pain ebbed away, leaving a pleasant numbness in its place. Naruto's senses managed to penetrate the dark wall around him, telling him that someone was holding onto his hand. Another eternity passed before the noises around him became clear enough to hear snatches of individual voices. Only Naruto dense enough. Sasuke. Number 1 knucklehead. Kakashi. Troublesome. Shikamaru without question. Naruto felt the hand grasping his tighten his grip and fought to return the squeeze but failed. The sounds from the outside world gave him some idea of day and night, but the hand never left his. Eventually the cycle of night and day managed to pierce the void, the world becoming a repeating series of light and shadow. His eyes seemed to be glued shut, but he managed to force them open just enough to see through the cage of his eyelashes. The world seemed to be out of focus to Naruto as he caught glimpses of the outside world, guessing who the blurs were from their voices. As with the sounds, the images sharpened and blob-like silhouettes became people-shaped silhouettes. Naruto managed to turn his eyes, staring through his eyelashes at the figure sitting at his bedside. He knew it was Hinata, even without seeing her face. Naruto's first contact with the world was a groan. His limited field of vision was instantly obscured by the silhouettes of anyone in earshot. Naruto felt his eyelid pulled back and a bright light was shown into his eye, prompting another groan. Welcome back to the land of the living, Tsunade told him as she helped him sit up. How do you feel? Hinata asked. Like Akamaru's Yu toy, Naruto replied. Tsunade started checking Naruto's vitals as the others continued talking. Any idea what happened to me? Sakura's face hardened. Danzo used a rare plant to poison you. I'm going to flatten him, Naruto growled. You're a little late for that, Sakura told him. Tsunade and Sasuke got there first. What did you do to Danzo? Naruto asked then wished he hadn't as Sasuke and Tsunade's faces morphed into sinister grins. Tsunade beat the hell out of him, Sasuke said. Followed by 3 days of torture by Sasuke, Tsunade added, which left him somewhat mentally handicapped. In the end we made him stand and told him to start walking until his feet bled, then keep walking. Naruto failed to suppress a shudder. I dare say he'll turn up somewhere eventually, Tsunade said evilly. Tsunade and Sasuke's expressions went back to normal and the air in the tent lightened. But here's something that you'll find interesting, Sasuke said, your banishment and null and void. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Turns out that Danzo either blackmailed or threatened most of the council members to get them to vote for your banishment. Why am I not surprised? Naruto growled, if he ever reappears again, I'll set the fox on him. Tsunade finished checking Naruto over before making him lie down in the bed again. He tried to protest, but Tsunade wasn't having any of it. Naruto, your body is still recovering. That poison is a death sentence under normal situations, so just relax and let yourself recover. I feel fine, Naruto insisted, trying to get out of bed again. You may feel fine, but your circulatory system is still weak and if you push yourself you will start to bleed again. But you know I heal. I don't want to hear it, you'll be up and around in 2 days at the most. Now lie down before I tie you to the bed. Naruto reluctantly lay back in the bed, staring up at the canvas ceiling. Don't blame me if I go mad from boredom, he muttered as Tsunade started tending to the other patients. Naruto managed to lie still, staring at the ceiling or dozing for almost an hour before he had a much welcomed distraction. The tent flap was pushed aside and Himika appeared, Hinata following close behind carrying a tray with 3 cups and a small teapot. Naruto raised a questioning eyebrow. Seeing as you were unable to come to me, I decided to bring the tea here, Himika smiled as she sat down next to Naruto's bed. Hinata served the tea, first to her grandmother then to Naruto. Naruto raised an eyebrow again as he looked at the tea in his cup. It was a pale green with strange things floating near the surface. That is a medicinal tea that'll do you the world of good. The recipe has been handed down through the Hyuga clan from the time of my grandmother, Himika told him as she watched his face. Naruto took one sip and choked. It is a bit on the bitter side, Himika agreed. Naruto reluctantly took another sip and pulled a face making Hinata giggle into her own cup. No less than a day later Naruto was back on his feet. He leaned on Hinata's shoulder as he made his way to the Hokage's tent. The blonde wasn't sure what had happened during his loss of consciousness, but Shikamaru had called an urgent meeting to discuss tactics for the coming battle with Orochimaru. As the last ninja squeezed into the Hokage's tent, a deathly silence fell as the crowd waited for Shikamaru to tell them why he'd assembled them. I think I've figured out why Orochimaru's attacks are becoming more frantic, Shikamaru told the hushed tent. If you check the time frame, he should be ready to switch bodies about now. How can you be sure he hasn't already switched bodies? Sakura asked. The way I see it, Orochimaru is still fixated on Sasuke's body as a replacement, Shikamaru replied. That's an unpleasant though, Sasuke muttered. But I've been thinking, Orochimaru is too powerful for anyone to defeat, even Tsunade and Jiraiya together couldn't beat him, Shikamaru said. So we should just give up and run, Sasuke spat. Listen to what I'm saying, Shikamaru retorted, he's too powerful for anyone to defeat. Shikamaru's emphasis on the word one wasn't missed by any of his audience. Tsunade was the first to realize what he was saying. The tag team assault? She asked. Right, Shikamaru confirmed, two paired ninja attack then retreat to recover as another two take their place. Let one team recover while Orochimaru is busy with another, maintaining an almost constant full strength attack. But what if he switches bodies, Naruto objected. I have a plan for that outcome as well, Shikamaru smirked. The crashing of trees was the fist warning of something heading towards the hidden leaf. The village wall shook and trembled as a massive tail slammed into it. Stone cracked and sections fell as Manda rose over the wall, Orochimaru and Kabuto perched on his head. The giant snake's tail lashed out again, shattering another part of the wall. Manda slithered through the hole in the wall, only to be met with a barrage of fireballs. The flame assault didn't hurt the summoned creature, but did surprise him. Manda reared up, tossing his head from side to side. Orochimaru managed to keep his footing, but Kabuto was thrown into space. He landed on the remains of a building before rocketing away from the summoned snake. Kabuto's retreat didn't go unnoticed by Naruto, who gave chase. As Naruto flickered away, Sasuke slowly marched towards the snake, eyes becoming red and black. Foolish boy, Orochimaru muttered, sending a swarm of snakes at him. Sasuke glared at the approaching reptiles but refused to move. There was a sickening crunch as the wave of snakes slammed into something invisible between them and Sasuke. Sasuke's hands blurred as he made a set of well-known signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Sasuke let fly an enormous fireball that swallowed the still stunned snake wave. The snakes were incinerated in seconds by Sasuke's fireball, causing Orochimaru to growl. As the smoke cleared, the air in front of Sasuke rippled and a large circular shield appeared. A skeletal arm appeared behind the shield growing upwards until a shoulder appeared. A ribcage appeared above Sasuke's head and more astral bones growing out from it. Muscles and skin appeared over the skeleton, then clothes and armor, completing the Titan of Susanoo. Manda lunged again only to be caught by Susanoo. Susanoo was about to throw the snake away when Manda's tail wrapped around Susanoo, attempting to crush the life from the giant. Naruto launched himself at Kabuto, planting both feet in his back. Kabuto stumbled forward only to be knocked backwards again by Naruto's foot colliding with his face. Naruto backed away from Kabuto as he tried to stop the blood flowing from his nose. Kabuto's chakra flowed out and covered his hand, forming his usual chakra scalpel. I can do that too, Naruto grunted, chakra blades appearing at his hands. Both shinobi stood facing each other, neither moving for what seemed an eternity. Naruto moved first, launching a chakra shockwave at Kabuto. He dodged a blast and charged at Naruto. Naruto ducked low and kicked Kabuto in the chin before he flickered. Kabuto aimed a swipe at Naruto as he appeared beside him and slashed his arm, but only his sand. Naruto materialized again, catching a cloud of sand with his foot and kicking it into Kabuto's face. Kabuto's glasses kept the sand from his eyes, but he still couldn't see Naruto lunging at him, blades first. Kabuto managed to block the first blade with his scalpel, but the other cut deep into his forearm. He managed to dislodge Naruto and retreat into a thick patch of forest. I haven't forgotten about your regeneration ability, Naruto called as he ricocheted off a tree, creating a Rasengan in his hand. Naruto tore through the bushes, reducing them to shreds until he found Kabuto. Naruto landed a kick in Kabuto's chest before backing away and forming another Rasengan in his other hand. Kabuto's arm recovered a second before Naruto charged, and he recreated his chakra scalpels. Naruto just managed to dodge the first chakra scalpel, the second cut into his arm, but it was too late to stop Naruto slamming the Rasengan into Kabuto. Susanoo struggled against the snake's grip as Manda bared his fangs. Susanoo managed to get its arm free and grabbed Manda's head in a vice-like grip. The grapple was brief and both titans broke away. Susanoo ducked out of the path of Manda's next lunge, one hand catching the snake's lower jaw as the summoned creature passed, but did nothing to stop the summoned creature. There was a split second where both giants stood with their backs to each other, then Manda howled in agony. Susanoo dropped Manda's severed jaw to the ground with a crash as it turned around to see the now writhing Manda. "Time to finish this," Sasuke muttered, eyes blazing crimson. Susanoo launched itself at the still writhing snake and brought both fists down on Manda's head, slamming him into the ground. Sasuke's eyes glinted as he made Susanoo draw its leg back, then kick Manda into the cliff face behind Konoha. As the snake rose up again, blood pouring from its ruined mouth, Susanoo uncorked the sake bottle at its elbow. The astral titan swept his arm in a wide arc, forming the Sakanagi longsword. Manda lashed out with his tail, only to have it pinned to the ground. Without missing a beat, Susanoo pulled the blade from the ground and rammed it upwards through the snake's head. Manda's eyes still showed absolute contempt for his enemy, even after they dulled and the summoned creature crashed to the ground. Susanoo's sword retreated back into its gourd as the titan started to fade. First armor and skin, then the muscles and finally the bones of Susanoo faded away. Sasuke's eyes changed with the fading giant. Manjutsu Sharingan changed back to a normal Sharingan, then back to Onyx. Sasuke's ears pricked and he reacted before he could think, just managing to dodge a swing of Orochimaru's sword. Sasuke launched himself backwards, away from the snake as he placed two fingers into his mouth and let out a short high whistle, followed by a longer one. The whistle echoed around the village, over the battle. Sasuke landed away from the snake ready to fight as Orochimaru grinned sinisterly. "Now Sasuke, I'll take what should have been mine a long time ago," he hissed. "Over my dead body," Sasuke growled. "I do hope we can avoid that." Sasuke's ears pricked again and he smirked as Neji and Hinata appeared. Sasuke charged a Chidori in his hand and charged at Orochimaru. Sasuke ducked the first swipe of Orochimaru's sword but was caught off guard by a large snake appearing from the Sannin's sleeve. As the snake wrapped itself around Sasuke's neck and his Chidori faded, Orochimaru leaned in close to Sasuke. "I'm disappointed, Sasuke," the snake hissed as Sasuke choked. "I thought you were better than this." Sasuke clawed at his thought, gasping for air. "Now to take your body." Orochimaru's grin became a frown as he felt something wasn't right. Sasuke's eyes met Orochimaru's and he smirked before exploding in a cloud of thick white smoke. "Damn shadow clones." Orochimaru roared. Hinata appeared through the smoke in front of Orochimaru as Neji circled around behind him. Both Hyugas assumed the same stance of their clan. 8 trigrams, 128 palms, they versed, voices in complete unison. Neji and Hinata hammered their fingertips into Orochimaru, each careful to hit the same chakra point as the other at the same time. All Orochimaru could do was endure as the Hyuga Taijutsu sealed his chakra pathways. Neji bounded around to stand next to Hinata and deliver their final blow. They both planted their open palms in the middle of Orochimaru's chest, their chakra ripping through bone and muscle with ease. As Orochimaru stumbled backwards, Hinata and Neji parted, making way for the next wave Choji. Partial expansion jutsu. Choji yelled as made his now huge hand into a fist and slammed it down onto Orochimaru. Choji hammered his fists into Orochimaru, driving him into the ground. Orochimaru tried to block, but the weight of Choji's hands alone was too great. Choji grabbed Orochimaru's leg and pulled him off his feet, swinging him around his head before throwing him into the air. 2 green blurs launched themselves from the ground, rocketing towards Orochimaru. Lee and Guy rapidly kicked and punched Orochimaru in the distinct pattern of the reverse lotus, but doubled. As Guy slammed his foot into Orochimaru, sending him flying towards the ground, Lee appeared to knock him back upwards. The spinning Guy finished their part by impacting, feet first, into Orochimaru and drilling him into the ground. The dust cleared as the snake forced himself to stand, just in time to see Tsunade and Sakura's fists heading for his face. Tsunade and Sakura's first punch landed in the center of Orochimaru's face, followed by a flurry of blows to his chest and stomach. Both Kunoichi acted as a mirror image of the other, each hitting the same point on either side of Orochimaru's body. They took care to land their punches on vital points on the snake's body, made sure each of their blows broke something. Their last blow was a double punch to the jaw, sending him staggering backwards. Orochimaru wobbled but didn't fall. His vision focused again in time to see Sasuke and Kakashi charging at him, each with one hand shrouded in lightning. The snake screamed as they punched through his shoulders. Blood poured from the holes in Orochimaru's shoulders as Kakashi and Sasuke backed away. Jiraiya and Naruto, mimicking Kakashi and Sasuke's attack run, charged at the snake, but this time there was a spinning Rasengan in each of their palms. They rammed the spheres into Orochimaru's chest. There was a brief second where Orochimaru was pummeled by the pure chakra, then sent crashing through several barely standing walls. Naruto flickered to a better vantage point, chakra blades ready as Gaara readied his sand to finish Orochimaru. But as the dust cleared, the snake Sannin was nowhere to be seen. "Find him." Tsunade ordered and the ninja scattered. Naruto found a trail of blood on the ground and started off in hot pursuit but scowled as the blood drops vanished. Naruto looked around but couldn't see any sign of the snake. Naruto swore and flickered in a swirl of sand. Orochimaru stumbled away from the perusing ninja. The snake froze as a shinobi appeared at the end of the street and caught sight of him. Orochimaru couldn't make out the face of the shinobi, but he appeared to be injured, then the snake saw the large circular glasses. "Lord Orochimaru." Kabuto yelled as he rushed to his master. "Kabuto, your body," the snake choked, spitting blood over the ground. "Take my body, Lord Orochimaru." Orochimaru seemed to shed his skin, his body falling apart to reveal his true self. His face was the last to drop to the ground as the massive white snake lunged at Kabuto. The snake wrapped itself around Kabuto and sank its fangs into his neck. Kabuto opened his mouth in a silent scream as the snake sank into Kabuto's body. Kabuto threw his glasses away before covering his eyes with both hands. After a brief convulsion, he looked up with green slit pupil eyes as he knelt down and picked up Orochimaru's face before pulling it across his own. Orochimaru flexed his fingers and rolled his shoulders before heading back towards the battlefield. Tsunade was still coordinating the search when she saw the snake Sannin appear from the shadows. An ambush squad materialized around Tsunade, each armed to the teeth. Orochimaru stood over his former arms and picked up his sword again. The ambush charged at Orochimaru, but were cut down by a single sword swipe. "Now where did we leave off?" The snake asked himself. "Oh, I remember." Without waning, Orochimaru lunged at Tsunade, sword held high. Tsunade made no move to dodge, just stared defiantly at Orochimaru. The snake's charge seemed to slow, and his pace became uneven as he advanced on the Hokage. Orochimaru's legs gave way and he crashed to the ground. He tried to stand, but fell back to the ground again. He looked down at his legs, and his eyes went wide in shock as he saw dead tissue spreading up his legs. The snake snarled as he felt a burning pain spreading with a black shadow. The pain suddenly appeared in his hands, making Orochimaru shift his attention to them. He stared in horror as his hands blackened, becoming necrotic. The death spread up his arms, bringing searing pain with it. The crowd of Konoha ninjas surrounded Orochimaru as the snake fell to his knees, the flesh of his legs also rotting. "What trickery is this?" the snake demanded. "Orochimaru, Kabuto has been dead for over an hour," Tsunade said. "We used a dead soul jutsu to move his body." Orochimaru's eyes narrowed, he hissed and tried to hurl his sword at Tsunade, but found he couldn't. The deathly shadow was still spreading up his legs and arms, and the snake screamed as it reached his torso. "Rot in hell," Jiraiya told his one-time friend as the snake choked and spat blood across the ground. Orochimaru let out a final blood-curdling scream as death reached his neck. Even Orochimaru's voice seemed to die along with him as his eyes went dull and lifeless. There was a long second where Orochimaru's corpse knelt frozen, silently screaming at the sky before it fell forward, hitting the ground with a solid thump. Tsunade flipped the body over, seeing the twisted face of Orochimaru. She sighed as she turned away from the body, heading back to the Hokage tent. "It's over," she breathed. Tsunade froze as a choking sound filled the air, and she turned. The still rotting corpse of Orochimaru twitched and rose to its feet with eyes blazing. "I'll drag this whole village to hell with me," he screamed. Orochimaru's body seemed to fall apart, revealing his snake self again. Orochimaru surged upwards, soon towering over the village. The snake froze before its skin split and the single head became two. The snake heads continued to split until 8 heads loomed over the leaf and sand shinobi. Oshii Naruto started but was interrupted by a snake head slamming into the ground where he'd been standing a second ago. "Retreat!" Tsunade screamed, "Get away from it." The Konoha and Suna shinobi didn't need to be told twice, they wasted no time in running from the Hydra monster, all except Naruto and Sasuke. "Sasuke, we need a Sharingan trump card." Naruto shouted at Sasuke as he flickered. "I don't have the chakra." Sasuke bellowed back, "How about you summon the boss toad?" "That thing won't let me stand still long enough to summon him," Naruto replied, dodging another lunge of the Hydra's heads. Naruto launched a chakra shockwave at nearest snake head, smirking as it was severed. The head was already breaking apart before it hit the ground as the stump writhed in pain. Naruto's smirk vanished as the wound closed up before another head burst forth to replace the severed one. The blonde flickered out of range of the snake heads, landing next to Sasuke. "Any bright ideas?" "Who do I look like?" "Shikamaru." Sasuke replied. "I thought you were supposed to be a genius." Naruto yelled, ducking to avoid a wave of debris thrown by the Hydra. The building the two shinobi were standing on was smashed by one of the Hydra's tail and they rocketed away, trying to find another vantage point. "Naruto, sever the heads, I'll seal the wounds with Amaterasu. That should at least buy us some time." Naruto nodded before he and Sasuke took off as one. Naruto targeted the nearest head as they came in range, he and Sasuke split to dodge a lunging head. Naruto fired a shockwave and cut the head clean off. Sasuke's eyes locked on the neck and black flames surged, sealing the wound. Naruto moved onto the next head, Sasuke hot on his heels. Naruto dodged a tail swipe and cleaved another head. Sasuke fulfilled his part with another patch of black fire. The pair continued around the Hydra, severing and sealing the heads until only one remained. Last one. Naruto screamed as he landed on the last head and drove both chakra blades into the snake. He forced his chakra through the snake, then swung his arms, decapitating the snake. Sasuke coated the last stump in flames as Naruto leaped away and landed next to him. They looked at the writhing mass of necks and tails with grim expressions. "It's still not dead," Naruto cursed. "Summon the toad," Sasuke told him, "we need more firepower." Naruto nodded as he cut his thumb with his teeth. "Summoning." Naruto cried and he and Sasuke vanished in a cloud of white smoke. As the smoke cleared, Sasuke realized they were standing on Gamabunta's head. "In a while brat," Gamabunta started, but his voice faded as he saw the thrashing Hydra. "What the hell is that?" "Long story for another time," Naruto told the toad, "right now we need to kill it." "Ready when you are," Gamabunta replied, drawing his sword. "Hang on," Naruto told Sasuke. One of the burned stumps stopped writhing and a new head burst forth, only to be severed again by Gamabunta's blade. "This is pointless," Naruto yelled. "We need to destroy this thing on one go." Sasuke yelled back, burning another neck stump. An idea popped into Naruto's head. "Ostode, stop this thing moving." Gamabunta launched himself into the air, avoiding the writhing mass of tails and necks, before coming back down on the center of the Hydra and driving his sword through the core of the Hydra, pinning it to the ground. Gamabunta leaped away again, landing out of the reach of the Hydra monster. "Ostode, let's hit it with the oil. Try and make it a mist if you can." "I hope you've learned some fire techniques," Gamabunta replied, massing the requested oil in his throat pouch. Naruto turned to Sasuke, "Ignite the oil, and I'll fan the flames with this." The blonde summoned a Rasengan Laden with his wind chakra, then slid down to Gamabunta's nose. Sasuke summoned the last of his chakra as he readied himself. Fire style. Toad Flame Hurricane. Gamabunta let fly a heavy spray of oil as Sasuke followed with a jet of fire, and Naruto hurled his Rasengan into the flames. The result was spectacular. The oil spray became a massive fireball that was whipped up into a tornado of white-hot flame. The Hydra was caught in the center of firestorm, and its screams could be heard over the roar of the flames. The Hydra was incinerated in seconds, and the raging winds of the firestorm scattered the ashes over the forest before dying away to nothing, leaving only scorched ground. "I think we went a bit overboard," Naruto muttered. "Just a bit," Sasuke agreed. A sudden realization hit Naruto and Sasuke like a ton of bricks each. "It's over," Naruto whispered, "we've won." The two ninja turned as a cheer filled the air. The Leaf and Suna shinobi were all standing on top of Konoha wall, cheering, applauding and jumping around. Naruto held out his fist to Sasuke, who responded by tapping his own against Naruto's. Naruto turned back to the other shinobi and abandoned all dignity as he started dancing around as well. "Idiot," Sasuke and Gamabunta groaned together. The morning sun bathed Konoha in a golden light as it peered over the top and through the cracks of Konoha's hastily rebuilt wall. It was just a temporary measure until there was more time for rebuilding. Naruto was with the remaining Suna ninja, preparing to leave the village when Shizune appeared. "Tsunade wants to see you," she told him. Naruto nodded and headed towards the Hokage's tent. He pushed the flap aside as he entered, meeting the stern gaze of Tsunade and Jiraiya. "They're going back to Suna," Tsunade said, "even after the banishment order is gone." "It's not as simple as you think," Naruto said. "Gaara, Temari and Kankuro are my family, they took me in when I had nowhere to go." "We were your family before Suna," Jiraiya reminded Naruto. "It's not like I'll be gone forever," Naruto objected. "I'll spend a few months in Suna, then a few in Konoha and so on." Tsunade sighed, "There's nothing we can say that'll change your mind." Naruto shook his head. "I belong to both villages," he said, tapping the Konoha headband around his arm, then the Suna one around his forehead. Tsunade sighed again. "Well, when you get back, you'll have a load of paperwork waiting for you, Rakudame." Naruto's jaw hit the floor with a loud thud. "What?" he asked quietly. "You heard me right, brat, you are going to be the Rakudame Hokage." Naruto was too stunned to react for almost a minute. When he regained the function in his limbs, he grabbed Tsunade in a hug. "What's that for?" she asked. "You've proven yourself more than capable of the role during the past months." Naruto released Tsunade as a sudden thought struck him and his face fell. "If I'm Hokage, then I can't bounce between Suna and Konoha as I want to. I dare say I could be persuaded to look after things while you're gone," Tsunade said offhandedly. Naruto's face brightened again and he grabbed Tsunade again. Alright, Tsunade muttered, trying to brush Naruto off. Naruto finally released Tsunade again and she stepped out of arm's length. "Now if we're done here, I need to arrange a few things before I go. Later Granny Tsunade, pervy sage." Naruto didn't wait for a reply before slipping out of the tent. "What does he mean, arrange a few things?" Tsunade asked as she looked at Jiraiya. "Don't look at me," Jiraiya replied. Tsunade rubbed the bridge of her nose. "Why do I suddenly feel a headache coming on?" Naruto looked back over his shoulder at Konoha, the sounds of rebuilding works drifting around him. Temari and Kankuro were sitting against a pile of rubble while Gaara stood beside Naruto. Naruto looked around at the sound of footsteps. Sasuke and Sakura, each with a packed rucksack on their back, approached. Naruto raised an eyebrow, and what are you planning? There's nothing left in this village except bad memories. I figure I'll start over somewhere new. Sasuke told him, and Suna seems as good a place as any. Naruto looked to Sakura. Knowing you, you'll end up half dead and needing someone to patch you up, Sakura told him, and who better than me? Mind if they tag along? Naruto asked Gaara, who shrugged. Their choice. We're going to need a bigger tower, Temari muttered. Shall we get going? Sasuke asked, moving towards the gates. We're still waiting for one more person. As Naruto finished speaking he looked around again, saw Hinata and Himika walking towards them. Hinata took hold of Naruto's arm as the pair reached him. What took so long? He asked. We had to wait until Hiashi was distracted, Himika told him, now you look after my granddaughter Naruto. Don't worry, Naruto reassured her, I'll take good care of her. All heads turned as an angry shout filled the air. Hinata. Hiashi roared as he came into view, looking extremely angry with other Hyuga shinobi on his tail. Naruto paled, I think we'd best be making tracks, he muttered before he and Hinata vanished in a swirl of sand. Wait for us. Temari called and also vanished, followed by Gaara, Kankuro, Sakura and Sasuke. Hinata. Hiashi yelled into the morning, but she was already way out of earshot.